OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Well, now that's a bit more like it, isn't it? That kind of weekend that we could all do. Just hook that to our veins, please. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. If you want to share your story of the weekend with us, we'd love to hear it. Or, of course, you can use the hashtag OTBAM to get in touch. We're also on Twitter. We stream live on YouTube, so you can leave a comment there. Wherever you are, we are. That's our motto here on OTB, and we'd love to hear from you, as I said. Neil Treacy, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good, Ger. How are you?
Well, you were obviously working on Saturday afternoon, but for the rest of us, I'm reaching into one of the most overly quoted tropes in pop culture. That scene in Shawshank Redemption where the prisoners get a few sudsy beers on the roof as the sun breaks up just after they've done a bit of, you know, an honest day's work, and they're rewarded with the beer. That's what it felt like on Saturday afternoon. A little bit of normality returning to our lives as amazing thing after amazing thing happened. Beibhinn Parsons scores this absolutely amazing try for Ireland. You flick over and it's a Grand National win, a 1-2-3-4-5 for Ireland, a 1-2 for Henry Bromhead, and of course Rachel Blackmore winning. And then Leinster coming from 14-0 down, the game kind of looking a little bit over after 8 minutes, where you're like, what the hell happened here to win that game in fairly convincing fashion. So not a bad Saturday afternoon.
It certainly wasn't, and it's like when I got home on Saturday evening, having done that Leinster match, and I got in the door, I was having my dinner, and I was like, right, there's an almighty backlog of things that I've missed in the last 4 hours, from the point in the afternoon where I got up and left to head off to do the game. Like, even before that, you're talking about Trent Alexander-Arnold scoring an absolute whirly for Liverpool to win it against Aston Villa. Like, you know, plenty of tension in that alone. And then there's a nice little brilliant Irish sporting timeline from probably 5 o'clock until 7:30 on Saturday evening, where you have the Irish women's rugby team going out and giving Wales an absolute battering, to the point at about, 23 minutes past 5, when Rachel Blackmore crosses the line at the Aintree Grand National, to 5:38 when Leinster go 14-0 down, and you're like, oh, mother of God. And then 20 minutes later, they're somehow not just level, but back in front, and you're kind of thinking, God, they would have been delighted to get to half-time within 3 or 4 points, and all of a sudden they're 6 points ahead. Pretty wild few hours. And then obviously you've plenty of fun. That you can sit back after that and go, do you know what, I still have 4 hours of Masters to watch later on this evening.
And it turned
Cracking day.
Yeah, and it turned out that was actually the best day of the Masters in many respects. We'll talk about the absence of drama somewhat a little bit later on, apart from a little stutter around 15 by Hideki Matsuyama, who ultimately has won it. If you're just waking up this morning and you don't know, Matsuyama held off the challenge. Essentially, it was Anders Schauffele who managed to finish third in a 2-horse race. Zalatoris ultimately finishes second. We'll get into the golf and the details a little bit later on with Nathan. I actually was watching the post-race stuff with Rachel Blackmore, waiting to see her interview, and missed the first 8 minutes and flicked over and was like, what? So what happened in those first 8 minutes?
It was just really bizarre. All week we had been talking about how we were going to get this incredibly tense, nervous arm wrestle between Exeter and Leinster, and we were talking about, if there was going to be a game that last weekend that we weren't going to have a try in, the safe money was it was going to be Exeter against Leinster. And in the end, we had 2 all-French semi-finals yesterday that produced, I think it was 25 penalties and a drop goal and not a try between the 4 teams. Yeah, it was just bizarre. Exeter came out at a ferocious pace, and they seemed to do a really good job of isolating Leinster's defence into one-on-one matchups. And I think there was just maybe a little bit of rustiness. There were some sloppy tackles. There was a couple of players that fell off a couple of tackles, and they just weren't picking out the right men. But an incredible job, to be honest, because once they actually got their hands on the ball properly, I think what a big thing was as well was, for the first 8 minutes or so, they struggled to actually get a hold of the ball, because they gave away a penalty early on. Exeter kicked that up the line towards touch. Then they gave away a free kick at the ensuing line-out. Then a scrum came for Exeter, and all of a sudden they were over for a try. Leinster had barely touched the ball inside the opening 2 minutes of the game. Then Exeter go down and do it all over again. And to be honest, within a few minutes, once you saw Leinster actually put the ball through their hands and go through some phases and get a little bit of possession, you actually thought, okay, they actually look a little bit sharp here now that they're able to touch the ball. I thought James Lowe in particular, they were getting great change anytime they got the ball out to him, and they got him in a one-on-one matchup with Ollie Woodburn. He was getting around the outside of him every time, and once he got in over for that first try, there definitely was an element of, all right, okay, they were 14-0 down. They've got something back.
Yeah.
They're looking a little bit sharp. It doesn't look all lost here. It certainly doesn't look all lost anymore.
Cool the Jets at that stage. It was definitely, there was my Leinster supporting WhatsApp group was like, what? And then all of a sudden, like, actually, hang on, they're playing quite well. I know you were at pains before the game to say this ain't going to be no miracle match. But 14-0 down after 10 minutes, not quite the miracle match, but not far off it. If you were told you have to give Gloucester a 14-point head start.
Well, like, in my defence, I was not aware Leicester were going to go 14-0 down. Like, if I was talking purely on the basis of, Leicester just going out and winning the game. I'm not talking about specific situations where they give the European champions a head start. Let's be absolutely clear on that. No, like, it was an absolutely brilliant comeback, and you would have it right up there with some of the best, I think, like, all-round performances they have put in over the last, probably in the guts of a decade. Even if you go back to when they were winning those titles.
Yeah.
From the 8th minute onwards, they were absolutely outstanding and executed everything to almost perfection, I would say. A
question, and it's obviously meaningless really in the grander scheme of things, but I wonder how this team stacks up against the previous Leinster teams who have won Heineken Cups. Obviously, the backbone of this team is very similar to the one that won its most recent one, but the first team that won the 3 in 4 years, how does this team compare? And it's a question we might put to Alan Quinlan in a couple of minutes' time. Before we get to that, though, I did just want to play this. We have some José Mourinho speaking after his Spurs side were beaten 3-1 by Manchester United. Have a look at this.
Sonny is very lucky that his father is a better person than Ollie. Because I think I am a father, I think a father, you have always to feed your kids. Doesn't matter what they do. If you have to steal to feed your kids, you steal. I'm very, very disappointed. And because with me, like we say in Portugal, bread is bread and cheese is cheese, I told already Ollie what I think about his comments. And I have to tell you that I'm very, very disappointed that in 5, 6, 7 questions, you ignore the dimension of that comment.
Thank you, guys.
So if that was my son, he doesn't get food, was what Solskjaer had said. And then obviously Mourinho comes back with bread is bread, cheese is cheese. Pau, pau, queijo, queijo is what they say in Portugal, Neil. I had to go and look that up, not going to lie. What does that mean? And it turns out, he's a truth teller. He's a speaker of truth to power, José Mourinho. That's what that... When you say that, it's like, it's because he tells it like it is, Neil.
Yeah, I got in from work yesterday evening, and I was flicking around on Twitter, and I saw that clip, and I clicked into it. So I saw that before I had seen why he was saying it. Like, I didn't realize it was in response to what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had said. So I had just heard José's comments in isolation, and the immediate reaction was, like, what in the name of God is he even saying? Because he's talking about, like, if I was Son's dad, talking about bread and cheese, and you're going, So I was completely clueless. Now I did, once I went back and saw why he was saying that in response to Ollie, you're like, oh, okay. But
I see the Man United fans giving him grief for literally taking what Solskjaer had said about not feeding Son if he was his actual son. Like,
literally.
But he's not taking it literally. He's just extending the metaphor in this kind of weird, tangled, very Mourinho-esque way, so that we end up talking about the impenetrable riddles that he is speaking in the aftermath of an absolute spanking for Manchester United, which probably is the end of the road. The difficulty is that it's going to cost an absolute fortune for Spurs. So do Spurs stick or twist? If you are the Spurs ownership group, if you're their chief executive, are you saying kind of going to have to sell Harry Kane because we're not qualifying for the Champions League next season? That story also came out yesterday. We have to keep José Mourinho as well as that? What?
Yeah, I think they have to twist, to be totally honest, even regardless of what happens in the League Cup. Because, like, even if they win the League Cup, what is the end game with them? Like, what is the end game with José at Spurs? What's the end game with José at any job at the moment? And I think as well, the important one, if Jose Mourinho's legacy at Spurs is that he is the man that let Harry Kane go, like he could win a couple of trophies and people are not going to be too happy with him whatsoever. Like, imagine being the Spurs manager that lets that lets Harry Kane go.
Well,
where do they go after that?
It's the end. It's the end of Spurs, essentially, because how are they ever going to get a striker as good as Harry Kane again, who will score as many goals as Harry Kane scores, to make them competitive, to make them a top 4 team? You can't go out and replace that or Harry Kane's personality, where he is so wedded to the club. You can't just do that unless there is an absolute genius manager out there who, and they've been linked with the latest off the German production line. So perhaps that's some way out of this. And look, maybe there's a scenario where they borrow the money to pay off Mourinho, and they take the risk that the next manager is going to be so impressive that Harry Kane stays for one more season. And anyway, Harry Kane's under contract, so it's not like Harry Kane can actually force a move here. He can be unhappy, but ultimately Harry Kane will start playing football next August when the fixtures start, and Spurs have said, we're not selling you because you signed the deal. You're our captain. We've got this new manager in. We've done everything you want, Harry. Lead the team. Lead the team. Do what we pay you an obscene amount of money for. Do your job. That's what they'll say to him. So it's going to be very interesting to see exactly what happens. It's 7:42. We'll come back to that a little bit later on with David Meyler. I want to tell you about what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. Between myself and Neil, we've got you covered with everything over the course of the weekend. Alan Quinlan, as I said, is standing by. Don't forget Ulster's win, lad, says Joe Moody. We'll talk about that at the end with Alan as well. David Meyler at 8:05 this morning. Sports Pages, 8:25. A Masters recap with Golf Weekly's Nathan Murphy. We've got one of the stars of the weekend, Beibhinn Parsons, is going to join us at around about 8:50. We've got our Gillette Performance Rankings for you, as we do at 9:05 every Monday morning, and then weekend reaction from around the world of sport from 9:30. So a really busy show between now and 10 o'clock, as I said, and we'd love to hear from you as well. All you got to do is WhatsApp us, 087 180 180, or of course you can leave a comment for us on the YouTube stream. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you? Good.
We couldn't have wished for a better semi-final pairing, assuming the game goes ahead somewhere in the world. But Ronan O'Gara versus Leinster, it's got a little bit of spice to it.
Yeah, it sure has. I think I was kind of hoping it wouldn't happen until a final, but they've been drawn against each other now. And of course it's on in France, but that's what everyone will be talking about in the next few weeks. Is it won't be La Rochelle against Leinster; it will be Ronan O'Gara against Leinster, and of course John O'Gibbs as well, who knows Leinster inside out. He was there for 6 years as assistant coach as well. So there's a real kind of added spice to that fixture.
Let's talk a little bit about Leinster first. When they went 14-0 down, did you have confidence they were going to be able to dig it out?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, it was a shock. It was a shock to anyone that was watching. I suppose Leinster didn't seem like they panicked in any way, and they probably showed that, you know, they've plenty of composure and confidence in the team to come back. There were 2 soft tries, really. O'Flaherty did really well, I suppose, to score them, but hammer blows, and not many teams can react in a positive way like Leinster did, you know, after 8 minutes being 14-0 down. So I just think the way they played after that was unbelievable. The confidence and composure that they showed. And, you know, Ross Byrne coming on was hugely impressive as well. That was another blow to him with Johnny Sexton going off. But I think it was vital that they reacted. Sometimes it's just not about the scoreboard. I know it can frustrate you if you can't score, but it was the way they played after being 14-0 down, the tempo and the pace. And they just keep banging away. And if you slip off tackles or if you get a bit soft in certain areas, they take advantage of that. And that's what they did very, very impressively on Saturday.
So notwithstanding there were some defensive issues in that first 8 minutes, what allowed them back into the game? What is it about the quality of play and their philosophy and how they execute that philosophy that makes them capable of giving the European champions a 14-point lead and still winning?
Well, you mentioned the word execute. I think it's obviously if you can hold on to the ball for long periods of time and Rob Baxter spoke afterwards, which is it's easier said than done when he talks about frustrations and maybe Exeter getting a little bit soft in the tackle areas themselves, but it's just the tempo that Leinster could play with, and at no stage did I feel. I think when James Lowe gets a try, that's it. It's game on again. They needed to score that try at that stage and get themselves back into the game. That was 17 minutes he scored that. So I think that was the one that kind of settled them and really give them the confidence and belief that if they hold on to the ball for a long period. So I think it's just down to their overall game, their scrum, their line out. They got the maul going. The ball was quick for Luke McGrath. And when they get quick ball like that, they can be devastating. And, with the Hugo Keenan did very well to run between the two defenders, get the little offload to James Lowe. When he gets that try, you're sprinting back down the field and you're ready to go again. It took him, 10 or 11 minutes to get the Jordan Larmour try to in the corner to get their second try. But that was brilliantly executed as well. The way they held the players in midfield, the lines are running. And so it's just overall tempo, pace and execution, like you said. They don't make many mistakes and they look like a team that just could change gears and go on to the next level. And when they do that and they do that well, there's very few teams can stop them because you just can't get the ball back. They don't allow turnovers. Their breakdown is really good, and that accuracy of passing is superb. So it was, and then just overall, I think their overall game, like they're not a team who have incredible X factor players who can just do something out of nothing. It's just the work rate of the whole team and the cohesion of the whole team. When they're on song, they're incredibly impressive, and that's what they did. And I know Exeter. I think you always say, and I say this in commentary, and I know this as a player, if you after being in such a great position, Exeter going 14-0 up and then suddenly being 20-14 down at half time, you're kind of thinking, what's the psychology there? What's going on in your head? Can you get back in? And then they scored a try after half time and it's game on again. The momentum has shifted a little bit, but I thought it was going to be much closer then, but Leinster controlled most of that second half very, very comfortably.
Quinny, just to talk about one of the players you mentioned there a couple of minutes ago, Hugo Keenan, and his role in Jordan Larmour's try. I thought it was really interesting at the time. If we look back at the Ireland-France game at the start of the Six Nations, and James Lowe had that opportunity in the corner in the first half, and we were criticising Hugo Keenan for not throwing that pass early enough. And then you look at last Saturday in the game against Exeter when he held on to it for as long as he could right up until that last second and got it out to Jordan Larmour. And that really was the difference between a try being scored and a try being held up. Like, it just shows you how much a guy like Hugo Keenan has been learning over the last couple of months and how much he's taken on even those small little things.
Yeah, it's the balance. And I think he did really well to hold on to the ball and not chip it on to James Lowe for the first try. Went between the two defenders and got that offload, Neil. And the timing of that pass was brilliant because he was just about to be tackled before he passed the Larmour. And as you say, he gets it right. I think he's a very intelligent rugby player. And the one against France was tricky, I think, when you look back on it. Small little bit of timing off there, but he got his timing right on Saturday. It was Stuart Hogg was in two minds. He stepped in, couldn't get back out to Larmour, and I just thought the decision there to give the pass on Saturday when he did to Larmour was brilliant. It was a superbly executed try, but the pass from Ross Byrne was brilliant as well. When you put the ball out and play in front of players running at full tilts, and they were kind of going across the field, which you try and tell if you're coaching kids, don't do that. But they executed that brilliantly, and he was superb, Hugo Keenan. I think his balance, his decision making. Of course, there'll be a bit of frustration with the first try. There was a couple of Leinster players, including himself, should have made that tackle on O'Flaherty, but he was brilliant on Saturday. And
Ross Byrne then, have we completely underappreciated him? in the last year or so, because he's had to do it a few times now. Come on early for Johnny Sexton in big games, and we would have criticised him for not coming up to the line enough, not holding on to the ball long enough. But he did all of those things on Saturday.
Yeah, he did. He's got to do it for Ireland. That's how he stops that talk. I think he's showed on numerous occasions that he's talented enough. He has the quality, but there is a difference with respect to anyone who'd make the argument that he should be starting for Ireland when Sexton's not there. I think he's had a few opportunities, and I wouldn't say it hasn't happened for him, because the easy thing is to blame the fly half when the whole team is not functioning. And a couple of those games were against England, who were on song at the time. So he just needs to believe in himself and kick on, and hopefully he'll get more chances from his point of view with Ireland, and that he can do that with Ireland. But they play a bit differently. It's down to the coaching and the game plan and the way Leinster play. He seems to be full of confidence and belief, and even though he's behind Sexton when he comes on, he doesn't let them down. He kicks his penalties, he kicks his conversions from the touchline, makes good decisions, and but it was good front football. You mightn't get the same space time at international level. Can he do it? Of course he can, but he's got to kick on now and really believe in himself. And a game like that on Saturday, coming off the bench and performing like he did, will do his confidence the world of good, and his belief.
Yeah, it had the bang of Johnny Sexton coming on for Felipe Contepomi against you guys all those years ago. There was just like a calmness about him coming on, but making big kicks early on. And the pass for the try, I know it's penalty advantage, so you can take a little bit of a risk, but it was still unbelievable level of execution, which at a key moment in the game, which defines the winning or losing of it ultimately. So, he was willing to take big risks as well. I just want to talk about this coaching, because the quality of the play, when you consider the players who are missing from Leinster's perspective, like Caelan Doris is gone, and not an afterthought, but the absence of him from the team is not noticeable. James Ryan, who is supposed to be, the Lions starting second row, and potentially if he'd played all these games would be in the discussion around potential Lions captain, not in the team, and they've still gone and won this game from 14-0 down. And there's a couple of other players as well, Will Connors and a few others who are missing. That speaks to me of obviously strength and depth, but the quality of coaching, that everybody knows what their job is. And Ross Byrne coming in and stepping into the number 10 role, and the team doesn't miss a beat around him. There's no sense of, oh geez, we're going to have to somehow change our game plan. So what is it about Stuart Lancaster and, in fairness, Leo Cullen, that they've built there that allows them to come through scenarios like the one at the weekend?
What allows them to come through it, Ger, is quality of player, loads of depth. You mentioned the players that are injured, but an ability to work on game plans and structures for a long period of time and implement stuff because you've so much time. It's the mitigation that you give to international coaches, not just in Ireland, it's a very short window. And you think it'd be probably more sensible for Ireland to play the same way as Leinster, because the vast majority of the players are Leinster players. But it's not always the case, and different coaches do things differently. International games can be a little bit different, particularly the Six Nations, because it's kind of cup rugby, and there's a real sense of make no mistakes, play in your own half, and don't take too many chances. Leinster still kick the ball a lot, but I think it's their accuracy and that cohesion of training and being around each other all the time. I would probably ask there's not a huge difference in what Ireland are trying to do and what Leinster do, but I think they can implement it really, and it's just different players, different personnel, and it comes down to the Leinster forwards, the way they delivered the ball. Luke McGrath, he's brilliant for months against Munster a few weeks ago. He was brilliant again at the weekend. I think he's very underestimated. The quality, the pace, the box kicking even that he can deliver. So it's you probably have to get O'Gara on to talk about the coaching philosophies. I'm not a rugby coach, but I think I would think it's a little bit more difficult to. But maybe it's more sensible then if they haven't got the time to try and just play similar to Leinster and play that way. But I just think the overall tempo that Leinster can play with and the intensity they've brought, and they looked. The question I had going into that game was, would the week off hinder them or be an advantage to them? And they looked so fresh, they looked fit, and they looked like they were on it after conceding those 2 tries, which, as I said, not many teams can cope with something like that.
Let's talk a bit about La Rochelle then. The quality of work that has gone into making that team be one of the best in France and now one of the best in Europe is a huge testimony to the force of O'Gara's rugby brain, but also his personality to get those players playing in that style. And I think the rest of Europe is kind of waking up to this now. So his coaching stock has literally never been higher.
Yeah, what impressed me most, I think, was aside from the tries they scored and the way they played in the second half, was their work rate. That's something we always kind of, and it will probably always happen with French teams. When you get into multi-phase, will they get a little bit lazy? Will they keep that drive, desire going? And I know from speaking to Rog, and I know the way he views work rate and the way he wants his team and players. He was like that as a player. I think it was non-negotiable that the work rate is through the roof, no matter what, with the ball, without the ball. And they're very, very talented side. They have a lot of game breakers. Someone like Botti and the centre probably had a quiet game at the weekend, didn't have a huge influence in the game. But Raymond Rule, the South African winger who came from Grenoble, he was scintillating. Leeds on the other wing was brilliant as well. I think the problem they may have is at 10, Ihia West. He's a good footballer, but it's the place kicking. And I said this in commentary on Saturday, if they get into a tight game and they're missing kicks, it could be an issue for him. But he's a very confident player. They're a very good side. Kerr Barlow at scrum half, he's robust, he's strong. He's played for the All Blacks a lot. But their forward pack was most impressive, their scrum. And someone like Skelton in the second row, he's probably going to be talking to La Rochelle players about, the Saracens team he played in the final in 2019 and how they beat Leinster. They'll know what they have to do. It's about doing that in a semi-final. Their back row is superb. When Victor Vito is on it, he's a fantastic player. Had a brilliant offload for their first try. Gordon and Aldred, of course, in the back row as well. So that's kind of intriguing. It's for La Rochelle, it's going to be about can they get that physicality and power going up front that can stop the flow of Leinster, because I think Leinster's backline will be better. They'll have more experience and a bit more quality in the backline. They have a couple of players, like I said, in Rule and Leeds, who can finish things off. And Doolan, their back three is very good. But the midfield, it's advantage Leinster. 10, 12, 13, it'll be advantage Leinster, I think. So it's going to come down to what happens up front. And, it'll be intriguing. They have a couple of weeks now, 3 weeks to prepare each other's teams. John O'Gibbs is there as well. And how can Ronan O'Gara's La Rochelle get to that level of that kind of pain threshold that you feel when you're out in the field, that Leinster seem to be comfortable at that level.
And Quinny, before we let you go, I don't know, did you get to see much of Ulster on Saturday evening beating Northampton in the Challenge Cup? They're in a position now, I know, away to another Premiership team against Leicester in the semi-final, but they're in a brilliant position now to get some kind of silverware, which, given the kind of trajectory Dan McFarland has brought them over the last couple of years, brings them right up towards the top again.
Yeah, it does. It was a brilliant win for them. I think being 8 points down at half time and, the couple of tries they conceded, again, psychologically, what kind of an effect it had on them. They believed in themselves, and I thought they were brilliant. Their overall game. And the one question mark, and Ulster fans will know this themselves, is up front. Can they deliver up front? They got 2 pushover tries from 2 maul tries. That's a real statement of intent. And I think the way they their forwards played, the aggression they brought, and the way they stood up to that Northampton pack was very, very impressive. It's tough for them now that they're away to Leicester, and that's the luck of the draw. But I think they're in a great position now. You know, the Stockdale try at the end, the reaction of the team, they look to be in a good place at the moment. And it's really down to Ulster. It's just having that bit of doggedness, because they have a lot of quality players, and if they can get that ball to their quality players and move the ball around, they're a handful for anyone. But it's up front, and that's the challenge going to Leicester, going to Welfare Road. If their forwards deliver, they're in with a great chance of getting to a final.
Alan, good stuff. We'll leave it there. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers, lads.
It's Alan Quinlan giving us his thoughts on the weekend's rugby. If you've got any that you'd like to share with us, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. It is 8:01. It's Ger and Neil with you all the way through until 10 this morning. We've got Beibhinn Parsons a little bit later on this hour. We're going to talk TheMasters with Nathan Murphy around about 8:30. Up next, though, football with David Meyler.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Women's Six Nations is here, and OTB Sports is your one-stop shop for all the best coverage, analysis and opinion.
As Ireland take on Wales and France to decide their position on finals day, we will bring you a special weekly Six Nations show with some of the great names of the game, as well as special interviews with Irish legends,
reporters at the games, all the latest team news, match previews and much, much more. Check out otbsports.com/Women's Six Nations.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, browse through dozens of new player markets, all powered by Opta. Shots on target, left foot, right foot, headed goals, assists and more. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie. 18+.
OTB AM.
with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It is 8:03. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. If you've just joined us, you're welcome. We've had Alan Quinlan on talking about the weekend's rugby, and you can get that podcast, of course, wherever you get your podcast. The best place these days is on the OTB Sports app. Now, David Meyler is with us. David, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Joe. How are you?
Yeah, good. I mean, where to start? Do we start with José? Do we start with Trent? Do we start with Man City losing? One of the first messages in this morning was Bielsa for Spurs. I was actually, that's a good idea.
Oh, that is interesting, isn't it? Bielsa for Spurs. I'm very intrigued by him, fascinated by him. Of course, look, I've seen a lot of Leeds over the last few years in the Championship, and then when they get promoted, you think, are they going to come to the Premier League and play this way? I was only talking to someone yesterday, and they asked me, what has been my standout performance, probably from a promoted side this season? It just brought me back to, you remember when Leeds played Liverpool at Landfield at the start of the season, and they kind of just, nobody knew what to expect from Leeds, and they kind of just went all out and attacking, and it was just a fantastic end-to-end game. And I think that's all down to Bielsa and what Bielsa's brought in. Apologies there, my wife. It's just what Bielsa's brought into that Leeds squad. Of course, before COVID hit, I was actually due to go watch Leeds train for a few days because somebody that's working at Leeds in the commercial side used to work at Hull, so I got to know him over the years. But their training is meant to be fascinating in the way he approaches everything from day to day. I don't know if you've seen much of it, but they do a thing twice a week called Murder Ball, which is basically 25 minutes of a straight 11v11 game with balls scattered all around the pitch, and it's just hell for leather. There's no fouls, no nothing, just run. And you can just see even in their performance against Manchester City, you just know that if they can stay in the game, they're that, physically fit and in peak condition, all the players, that if a chance does arise, because we know Man City are obviously going to dominate possession, push men forward, that if they can catch them, on the counter-attack, they'll get players forward and they'll get in and they'll get chances. And you can see that, like, prime example is Stuart Dallas. You look at him, like, he's probably been, most underrated player this season in terms of his performances, his work ethic. He plays, 3, 4, 5 different positions for them. And he's always reliable, he's always like a 7 out of 10. And certainly, look, with that, text in this morning, Bielsa for Spurs, he could, wow, it is interesting, yeah.
I mean, certainly the whole Spurs idea of them being entertainers and at the forefront, which we haven't seen for a little while here, would be restored in one fell swoop. Bielsa obviously can do this in the Premier League, it turns out, because that was one of the things, like, certain English journalists would have been suspicious about whether or not this was actually going to work in the Premier League, because, what's it going to be like on a wet Tuesday? It turns out good football is good football is good football.
No, 100%. Then again, he has this philosophy. Now, I don't know if you saw Jolien Lescott and Rio Ferdinand on BT. I am agreeing with them that sometimes he should probably alter it a little bit. Like when you go away to all the big clubs, of course, look, they got a fantastic result against City. But when you're, playing Chelsea away, Manchester United away, Liverpool away, you need to probably tweak 1 or 2 things. But they're just phenomenal. I think, with Spurs, they're very hard to watch. And that is down to Mourinho. That's the way he's kind of got them set up. There seems to be some sort of issue going on. He's blaming the players and, they just, it doesn't look like a good fit at the moment. Whereas, if you look back over the last few seasons, Pochettino, everybody liked Pochettino. Even if you didn't support Spurs, he just had something nice about him. They actually played good football. No, they didn't win anything. And that's why Mourinho's inevitably been brought in. But they're not going well, of course. Look, they're dumped out of Europe. They're, 6 points off the top 6. Of course, they've got the League Cup final against Manchester City, but you imagine that their focus will reshift after, their defeat. That will be a surprise to them. It's going to be very difficult. And then it's a case like, there's rumours of Harry Kane. If we don't, finish in the Champions League, then Harry Kane is going to want to leave. So, big problems ahead for Spurs.
We'll talk a bit more about Spurs in a minute, but is there anything about Man City's performance that would give you pause for concern? Is that just one of those one-off results that happens in a season?
Yeah, I think I personally think it's a one-off. Certainly for them. Look, I know Pep rotated quite a few players, playing Zinchenko in midfield. Like, they left Kevin De Bruyne on the bench. Gundogan, who's been arguably Man City's best player alongside Ruben Diaz, even John Stones. But it was one of those, he chopped and changed his squad around. He felt they'd have enough to win. It backfired. At the same time, they've been fantastic for the last few months. They built up such a lead. You just imagine it would be kind of back in Sunday morning, right, lads, let's get focused for the next game, turn this around, and they'll just go back again. That's the beauty of them. They just don't think it'll be a case like Liverpool in the sense that, they kind of go on this horrible little run. I think Man City have just too much in the bank. Like I said there, they're changing players and they're rotating all the time.
It's the stereotypical, we've got our eye on Dortmund here, and that's literally the only thing that matters because their lead in the league is so much.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And look, we know Manchester City have won the Premier League. It's only a number of matches now and a few points. I think the big one is he has to try and deliver the Champions League. I think that's the big one that the big boys at the top of Manchester City will want. And that's what Pep brought in to kind of achieve now. Obviously, of course, he's had a few Premier League titles, but they want the Champions League, so they'll be fully focused on Dortmund.
I did see some Man United fans pointing out that when Aguero scored the goal on the last day of the season to win the league, at this exact same stage, Manchester United were the same number of points ahead Man City are now, and so therefore history's going to repeat itself. Come on down, Edinson Cavani. Your time is now.
I don't think so. It's too much. I think the way Manchester City are, at the same time, United's result against Spurs will give them great hope. Like, they're an incredible second half team. I don't know what it is. Like, if you look back to the Brighton game, they were awful first half. Yesterday, I wouldn't say they were awful. They were bang average. Second half, they were fantastic. Some great bits of play. The goals are all very good goals. Even the goal that was disallowed, Pogba's pass to Cavani, his movement. It's a shame for United fans that Cavani's not probably 5 or 6 years younger, because he's a wonderful striker, and you can see why he scored so many goals. But I think that's a far too big of an ask for United to catch City.
What's the truth about Manchester United right now? Like, there's no.
It's $1 million question, though, isn't it?
Well, there's not that much.
Really.
There's not that much pressure on them because they're chasing down Man City. So, Nathan was making this point about it's easy for City because Liverpool aren't chasing them, and so therefore they look amazing. And what would it actually be like for City if there was a rival? But the same question, I suppose, for Manchester United. Like, Pogba looks great again. Like, but there's obviously a contract, and they have to decide whether or not to sell him in the summer. And you're like, do you get lulled into this again? Do you keep Pogba, and then next year there's 5-6 months of bullshit with the agent, and like 3 months of bad performance and a month out injured, but then the rest of the time he's genuinely world class? Like, I don't know.
I know. I think I don't want to. I'm going to say it. Go on, I'll give it to you. I think maybe the penny's dropped with Pogba. In the sense of, like, I can't. His contract obviously was due to be up at the end of this season. They kicked in the extension for another year. I think he's kind of like, he's happy, he's comfortable. Ollie's kind of put the arm around him. I always felt that they looked for Pogba for leadership, and I don't think he's that type of player. I don't think he's a leader. I think he's a very good footballer, world-class midfielder. But I think Bruno has kind of come in and took on a lot of that mantle. And I think as well, Harry Maguire's really stepped up the last few months. I think he's performed much better, and he's kind of taken on that role as captain. With United, though, they obviously have some fantastic players, but they have moments in games where they smell it and they just score goals. Like you look at yesterday, it's just key moments, like with, Fred, I think it's his second Premier League goal. I don't know, I think he scored in years. But like the sense of the good neat passing, he finds himself in the box where he never, like even McTominay in his post-match interview laughed and joked that, Fred has got the engine, he's getting forward, and he kind of laughed. Then you look at like Greenwood's cross, Cavani's movement, and then obviously Greenwood is an exceptional young talent. He can go right or left, and once he gets the ball in around that area, they just find ways to, score goals, win games. If they could be more defensively solid. Now they seem to, the old goalkeeper situation, it seemed to flip in Dean Henderson's favour, and he seems to relish in the challenge of knocking De Gea out. And like you seen yesterday, he makes, I won't say they were all fantastic saves, very good saves though, where he's alert, he's sharp, where Kane has a couple of half chances, he's on the ball, and there's kind of a feel-good factor, I think, at United at the moment. They're performing in, like I said, 45 to 60-minute blocks where they're just outpowering their opponents. And you look at it yesterday, their second half performance, as opposed to their first half, it's night and day, and it's just finding ways to win games, and they look good.
David, how good are United going to look next season when they sign Harry Kane?
Do you know what? It'd be very, very dangerous if they did sign Harry Kane. Now, that's the $1 million question. Is Harry Kane going to sign for United? Now, there's been a bit of talk, of course, over here in England. The only thing is, Harry Kane is not guaranteed trophies with Manchester United. It's not as if, if he joined Manchester City, you could just see him winning 2 or 3 Premier League titles, and you could see him scoring 25 plus Premier League goals every year. Whereas United, they are in a transition, because you look at it, there's probably been 3 different occasions this season where fans, I'm not going to say all United fans, some United fans have called for Ollie to be given the boot, and, where he always seems to manage to pick up results here and there that you kind of think, oh no, we'll keep him, this is great. I do, like, obviously I'm not a United fan, I'm looking for the outside, but it does seem to be kind of a feel-good factor. Ollie knows how the club, works, whether he's getting advice from Sir Alex or whatever, but he's got them ticking in the right way. Like, and of course, like Jerry touched on there, Nathan was saying Liverpool aren't challenging City, but United have been very good. And imagine, like, if you look back to the start of the season, it was always their away form was keeping them up around the top of the table. Their home form was awful. Imagine if they had sorted that out earlier on, it could be right up alongside City. So if they were to get Harry Kane, then you'd have to put them as title contenders next year. But do they have the funds for him? Would Tottenham sell to United? Does Harry Kane want to go to United? Who knows?
That point you make about the feel-good factor, I think, is really important. Stephen Doyle had the stat in commentary, or the post-match interview with Billy Perth, saying that United had, I think at that stage, it was 28 points from losing positions. So that would put them, transfer market, to this top of the table, or their table of points won from losing positions in matches. Manchester United are at the top, and effectively Man City are joint bottom, because Man City are always ahead in games. But there is something really special to a group never saying die. Now, they put themselves in positions against weaker teams. They concede stupid goals. I get that. But you can more easily fix your defensive problems than you can get team spirit and a culture and all those things. And that's the thing that Solskjaer, being a club legend, it actually means something. And it shouldn't mean something, because Klopp can do the same thing, and he's not a club legend when he walks in the door the first time, but he's obviously one of the world's best managers, and he's arriving with a track record. Solskjaer has had to learn on the job, and he's had an immense amount of problems. So, I mean, I can't but be impressed by how he has got to this stage, given his inexperience, his relative inexperience.
No, but it's a club like Manchester United is a kind of a family club, and it's run a particular way. I think if you look back, obviously Sir Alex Ferguson had the 26 years, and he'll have set a culture and a way that things should be done. Obviously, when Van Gaal comes in, Mourinho comes in, they'll have tried to change it and put their own stamp on it. I think David Moyes was just very unlucky that when he came in, it was kind of like, you've been given the hardest challenge in football, or one of them, to take over from such, a great manager. That I think Solskjaer has now come in and found himself, okay, like bringing in Michael Carrick into the coaching staff, and then you just see Darren Fletcher's been appointed. There just seems to be 4 or 5 of, the old guard that have played for years for Manchester United in and around the club, where they know how Manchester United works, and they are able to kind of influence the younger players coming through. They're probably able to influence the players, like the first team players who are in around the club, to kind of show them the Manchester United way and show them what it's about. And I think Ollie has that. Of course, Ollie has also brought Mick Phelan back in, who obviously was Sir Alex Ferguson's, assistant for a long time. There's a few boxes behind the scenes that have been ticked correctly, that they're people who understand the club and know what's going on. And that will filter into the players, whether it be, standards off the pitch, on the pitch. And there has been this never say die attitude with United. They always look like they're in games. Of course, when you've got players specifically like Dan James, Rashford, Martial, Greenwood, who've all got, bags of pace, that if there are times in games where we have to defend deep, we know we've got the players to explode up the pitch and get ourselves into the final third. Look, those players are all capable of scoring goals. So there certainly has a thing, and I think Solskjaer does deserve a lot of credit, because he's done good work. If you look back, say 2 seasons ago, United were all over the place. Of course, I know that they won the Europa League over with Mourinho, Van Gaal won the FA Cup or whatever, but it was never like the Premier League is their baby. They've won it 13 times. That's their trophy, and they wanted to bridge the gap. And I think United from last season have improved, and I think they will continue to improve. And I think, now whether or not they'll win trophies or win that Premier League next season is a big question, and it's a big ask of the squad. They certainly are going the right direction under Solskjaer. Yeah, I to be honest, that's why I had some sympathy with Solskjaer when he was talking about the importance of winning trophies versus the importance of actually building something. Those trophies that Van Gaal and Mourinho won essentially were not signposting them on the direction to anywhere. They were trophies in and of the season. They were a specific moment where the fans could celebrate, but it wasn't actually backed up with a philosophy or a team spirit or some sign of progress. That's why this transfer window is actually going to be the most important one for Manchester United since Ferguson left, because there's room for them, there's a potential for them to bridge
the gap into being one of the top 3 teams, top 4 teams maybe next year if you include Chelsea, who are going to legitimately at the start of the season think our squad's good enough to win this?
No, definitely. And I think the point you've just made there is really good about Mourinho kind of and Van Gaal winning trophies. It's almost, if you look at that with Mourinho at Spurs have always played nice, attractive football over the last few years under Pochettino. They've always been kind of knocking on doors here and there. Of course, look, the runner-up or finished up close to Leicester a few years ago, where everyone felt they should have probably, that was their year to win it. They're losing to Liverpool in Champions League final. That they go and they sign Mourinho thinking, right, he's got a squad to work with. We've been thereabouts. This fella's a proven winner. Like you kind of tell me, if Mourinho wins the League Cup and they beat Manchester City, that'll be great. That'll be the silverware. But if they don't finish in the top 4, it's kind of like, have we just, like as you said there about Solskjaer, building something for the future, not like Mourinho then will say, well, I've delivered trophies. This is what you employed me for. This is what I'm here for. But it is about the big picture, and can you kind of get a balance of both? And certainly, like if you were to weigh it up, that if Mourinho was to win the League Cup, they don't finish top 4, and United obviously continue to go on this, on a form they're in. Who knows how they'll do in the Europa League if they'll actually go on and win it. But if they're moving in the right direction, you'd have to ask yourself, would you rather be supporting Spurs, or would you rather, be supporting Manchester United, who seem to be, there's a bigger picture and they're building in the right direction. That, like you said, if they are to recruit top, I think they still probably need a partner for Harry Maguire centre half. Of course, look, people will highlight the central midfielders, the holding midfielder. Can they get a world-class experienced player? And then they probably need to, address the striker situation. But if they were to sign, 3 of those players, then they could be really, title contenders and really challenging Manchester City next year. But it'd be a case of, would you rather be supporting Spurs, like I said, or Manchester United, who seem to be moving in the right direction?
Yeah, to keep it on Spurs for the next couple of minutes, David, as well. Like you spoke about José there, and if they were to go and win the League Cup in a few weeks' time, like, what does that actually change?
Doesn't change anything really.
Aside from getting their hands on a trophy.
I used to love sitting down watching Spurs. When you see kind of Son, Kane, like you look even at the start of the season, okay, against Southampton, and where they're, Kane is assisting them for the 4 goals, and it's all great, and there's kind of a bit of fluidity to it. There's a bit of excitement. Now it's tough to watch Tottenham. It really is. They've got some fantastic players, but even like prime example is Ndombele in midfield. Like I watch him, he's either a 10 out of 10 or he's a 5 out of 10. There's kind of no middle ground with them where you get a consistent performance as opposed to, other players. It's just a case of our Spurs kind of, I won't say like, that whole, are you selling your soul to the devil to win trophies? That you kind of forgetting everything that you've been known for in the good play. There's going to be massive pressure because like they've moved stadium. Imagine that wasn't cheap. They don't finish in the top 4. Like winning the League Cup's not going to sacrifice or like be able to accommodate that really. So it is interesting to see how they progress, because I imagine Daniel Levy won't be happy with that, with just winning the League Cup.
He's clashed with players as well, obviously, at pretty much every club he's been at. But, like, I don't think, from Daniel Levy's point of view, if it's going to come down to Jose Mourinho versus Harry Kane, like, there's only one winner there from a Spurs point of view.
No, 100%. Harry Kane is kind of Tottenham through and through, isn't he? I know there's those stupid things go around about that he supported Arsenal as a boy, but Harry Kane is Tottenham. And that's the point, is you've seen so many different ex-players, pundits, journalists, everyone saying, like, what should Harry Kane do? Nobody really knows what Harry Kane wants. Of course, there was that article that came out that saying if they don't finish top 4, they want to move. But it will be proper interesting, because if he goes and has a conversation with Daniel Levy, a bit like, you watch the Amazon All or Nothing with Christian Eriksen, it wasn't about the money. He just felt, I want out, I want a new challenge. And if Harry Kane goes and Harry Kane kind of says, look, lads, I want out, it's going to be very, very difficult to keep him, because, it's certainly one that will be interesting over the next couple of months.
let's talk briefly about Liverpool, because obviously, I don't know if you had seen, but John Giles reckons that they're still in that game against Real Madrid. They're going to need one of those great magical nights in European football that we've seen from Liverpool throughout their storied history. It would help if Trent could come up with something like he came up with against Villa at the weekend. Again, same question. What's the truth about where Liverpool are at the moment?
Oh, they're kind of no man's land, really. Like, of course, look, they're still pushing for the top four. They're still in the game. Like, I know it's a tough ask. They've got an away goal. Like, if you were to be honest, could Liverpool score 2 goals? Yes, they could. There's no doubt in that. Even against Real, they created some chances. They just didn't take them. I think the performance of the day wasn't fantastic. They had chances. But it was just nice to see. I think it was an okay performance, but it was a brilliant result in the sense that, like, even Jurgen Klopp, I was reading something that, like, he thought they hadn't won their last 4 home games when it was 6 in the league, which just kind of shows you that they've been so dominant at home. It's going to be a very, very tough game against Real Madrid. It's going to be a big ask. It's a shame that there's not supporters there, because you just felt that if supporters were at Anfield, if you remember back to some famous nights, most memorably the Barcelona game where they did turn it around. They are still in the game, but I just don't know. Can they do it? Obviously, I'll be sitting glued to it, watching it, hoping they can do it. Certainly, Liverpool are kind of, I think they're at the stage where they just need finish in the top 4, see how the Champions League pans out, and just kind of hit the reset button for next season, get their, defenders back and kind of regroup, and then they'll mount City for a serious title challenge. But definitely they're kind of in no man's land where they could go and win every Premier League game, finish high up, and they could go on, and beat Real Madrid. You just don't know. But at the moment, I'm up in the air. But I'm positive. I'm hopeful that they can get a result against Madrid.
Is Jordan Henderson back close soon?
I don't ask.
Right.
I don't ask because I can't. Otherwise, if I was on here, I'd say, yeah, he's fit, but I don't know. I don't ask him. I just ask him how he is and how the kids are, and that's it. Yes. We catch up that way. It's the best way.
Well, it's more honest that way, isn't it?
Yeah, because he knows too. He'll be like, yeah, I'm fit, and then he's like, you're going to say that on the radio, aren't you? And I'm like, Well, I can't lie to you, so I just don't ask him.
Fair enough. That's the best way to go about it. As a Liverpool fan, do you think they're going to do it against Real Madrid?
Yeah, but it's like anything really. I come on after the Ireland games, and obviously we had the 2 defeats against Serbia and Luxembourg, and you're kind of like, all right, we're bottom of the group, this is awful, whatever. And I have to be hopeful. I can't live my life every day where it's just negative. I have to believe in something. I have to believe that Liverpool can win. All right, my mates tell me I'm deluded half the time, but like, even there was a period with Sheffield United, I think it was on with Joe, and I said, you know what? I think Sheffield United might stay up. I just want to be that way. I want to live my life that way. So do I think Liverpool are going to beat Madrid and go through? Yes, I do. Well,
it's that kind of craziness that allowed Liverpool to come back against Barcelona at that one time, and it's worth it for the one time that it actually does. Or in Liverpool's instance, it's not just that one time. It also happened in Istanbul, and it's happened regularly enough for you to be right.
Yeah. Of course, yeah, but it's like anything, like Manchester City fans that time when Aguero scored the goal, you have to believe. You have to have somebody to believe. If you're not believing in something, then what are you doing everything for? It's all good and well, though, me believing in the players. I hope the players believe in themselves, and I know Jurgen will believe in them. And that message will be passed across in the next few days training when they're, getting focused. You just want that's why I think the result the other day against Aston Villa was massive, to kind of get that one off their back of not winning it, at Anfield in so many games. And it wasn't great. The performance wasn't fantastic. It wasn't vintage Liverpool or anything. They got the job done. Even Trent, it's a wonderful strike. But if you look back and watch his performance in the game, he wasn't brilliant. He gave away the ball too many times for my liking. For a player of his capabilities and his range of passing, there was quite a bit, that you kind of say, come on, Trent, you're better than that. But then he pops up with the winner, and it's brilliant. So, they'll go in off that result thinking we have belief. And you can no doubt Jurgen will come out fighting, for his team and say, we're still in this game, we've got a chance. It'll be interesting. Obviously, he left out Mane the other day to try and obviously give him a rest. He hasn't been hitting the heights that we'd expect from him. His performances have been good in certain games, but he's not getting the goals in return, which is very disappointing, because when his goals kind of dry up, Salah's still remaining the same. And look, we've had this conversation about Firmino for the last probably 18 months.
Yeah.
Jota's been fantastic scoring goals, so you just don't know. I made a what did I say the other day before the Madrid game? I was on with you and felt that I'd love to see him go with kind of Fabinho, Thiago and Jota, and then play the front three. He might have to do it this time. So Jurgen, if you're listening, maybe that's the way to go.
We'll send him the clip. David, good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Cheers.
We're answering all the deep existential philosophical questions of a Monday morning here with David Meyler. If you don't have belief, what's the point in anything? 8:31 this morning. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Back to the rugby there. Somebody was asking, Neil, can you think of a better away win for Leinster in Europe? Ian O'Reilly was in touch.
Possibly, you'd have it up there, probably not as dramatic as the Clermont 2012 semi-final. Now, it wasn't strictly away, it was in France.
Yeah.
But it wasn't at Stade Marcel Michelin.
It wasn't in Dublin. I think the Quins quarter-final, but those two are important because they are staging posts on the way to ultimate victory, right? If they get beaten by La Rochelle, last weekend's for nothing.
Yeah, I think this was a real different one, because this was more of there were two kind of strands, I think, to it. The first was a bit of redemption for what happened last year in the quarterfinals. Granted, it was against a different team, but I think there was a real point to prove for them against a big Premiership team, that they just were not happy with the way they left things in that competition against Saracens. And then the other side of it, I think it was just very much, it was a bit of a flex performance. It was a statement of, okay, Exeter, you had your time last year, you're the European champions, but there was a bit of a push over. We're actually back this season,
Yeah, no, definitely. And look, we'll talk a bit more about that, I think, on the performance ranking coming your way. Not too long now. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number here. Now, as well as all the preview podcasts and special shows building up to the 2021 Masters, on Sunday, Golf Weekly brought you their first exclusive watch-along party, where they were joined by Conor Moore and on-tour pro Troy Merritt. Later on today, they're going to be releasing a special Monday review pod. That's all over on the Golf Weekly Patreon account. Go and subscribe if you haven't already. otbsports.com/Golf Weekly. Nathan Murphy of Golf Weekly, as it says here, I have to contractually refer to you that these days, Nathan, is with us now on OTB AM. Nathan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads.
There was about a 5-minute window where there was proper drama in the final round of the Masters.
Yeah, there was about a 2-hour spell where it was very dull last night, and we thought that Hideki Matsuyama was going to cruise home to victory, a nice little cruise down Rays Creek. But then I think his game management went to pot on the back nine, and there was that 5-minute spell where on 15, I'm not quite sure what he was thinking, considering at the time he had a 4-shot lead, went for the green in 2, went straight over the back of the green into the water. Xander Schauffele is hot in his tail, has just birdied 4 in a row. There's 2 in it. We come to 16, a real birdie opportunity, another hole where quite easily you can make birdie and bogey, and Xander Schauffele, well, I think it's fair to say, hit a shot that he will regret for the rest of his life. It got caught up in the wind. He said he hit it absolutely perfectly into 16, but it fell up short, went into the water, and that was really that. And Hideki Matsuyama won the tournament really on Saturday evening after the restart, after the rain delay, played some sensational golf, go back to 15 on Saturday, hit this approach for eagle to about 10 feet, hold that, birdied 16, opened up that 4-shot lead, and that was the key, because nobody was able to really put any pressure on him at all. There was a brief glimpse at the very start when Will Zalatour started with a couple of birdies, brought it back to a single shot. But Matsuyama was steady as you like for a good run of 9-10 holes. And during that time, a lot of players will probably be left with quite a few regrets, because none of them were able to kick on. Remember, he shot an over-par round in the final round of the Masters. He was on 10 under. There were 4 players who started on 7 under. There was a player on 6. Jordan Spieth was on 5. And none of them could get to 10 under par, which could have got them into a playoff. So a lot of regrets, but Hideki Matsuyama, I think, for the way he played, on Saturday evening and for the majority of the round yesterday. A more than deserving Masters winner.
It's not like there weren't opportunities out there. John Ram finished 6 under on the day and 6 under for the tournament. So therefore, any one of those in the top 5 could have at least put more pressure on him.
That's the beauty of Augusta. And John Ram was never in with a shout of winning the tournament. He started the day on level par. So there was no great pressure. He was able to take a few more risks. That is the difficulty that those in the chasing pack faced. The wind was up. The conditions were a bit more difficult than they might be on your average Masters Sunday. But absolutely, you're looking on that back 9 and you're thinking of Jordan Spieth's missed opportunities. And you're thinking back even to Thursday in Jordan Spieth and the triple bogey he had on the 9th when he hit a drive way right into the trees. And you think, just Jordan, it's the first round. We're 9 holes in. Just lay it up back onto the fairway. But no, he saw a little gap in the trees, went for it, ricochets back off the tree, ends up with a triple bogey. You're thinking, if you'd just been sensible then, are you going to be in a far better position now? So there were chances. Schauffele had the best of them, unquestionably, when he got to within 2 shots on 16, and he went for it. But yeah, that was an agonising moment. So there were, but that is Augusta every year on the back 9. Pretty much every hole is a potential birdie or a potential bogey, and we saw that. Matsuyama had 4 bogeys in his final 7 holes. So he did stumble over the line somewhat, but there was nobody there to take advantage.
How good is Matsuyama? Like, generally, where does he stand in the pantheon of Masters champions now?
Well, if we were sat here on the morning after the Masters in 2018 and you'd said Hideki Matsuyama had won the Masters, you would have said, yeah, that sounds about right. Went in as one of the favourites. And around that time, he was one of the best players in the world. He was the world number 2 for a period of time. He was winning a couple of World Golf Championships. He was winning big tournaments over in America. And he was on that short list of next major winners in waiting. So it's not a shock that he's won this. It's more a surprise because of his form over the last couple of years. He hasn't had a win since all the way back then. His form has just plateaued. He hasn't fallen off the face of the earth. He hasn't dropped out of the world's top 100 or anything like that. He struggled massively with his putting. He came into this week 166th in strokes gained putting rankings. So that is what was holding him back. But this week he putted brilliantly. Augusta, because the greens are so tough, is something of a leveler in that it brings the best putters back a little bit and gives those who aren't quite as strong a chance. But his iron play and his long game has always been as good as anybody. And that's what really got him through, particularly on Saturday evening when he just gave himself birdie chance after birdie chance. And he didn't need to rely on his putting because they were all 8 to 10 feet. These weren't raking 40 footers that he was putting in there on Saturday night. It was a ball striking exhibition. Took advantage of the softer conditions. It was a bit of a pity on Saturday night because it felt as though it was warming up for real drama when the wind had picked right up and you could see the thunderstorm was coming, and then the thunderstorm arrives, the wind drops, it softens the course, and he capitalized on that. He had 6 birdies in his 6 under par for his last 8 holes. So it's not a great shock because Matsuyama, to get to world number 2, you need to be a consistently brilliant player. He has been held back by his putting over the last couple of years. There's no reason why he can't kick on and win maybe another major over the next couple of years. He may have been helped as well by the fact that the number of journalists who were there was way down this year because of COVID. He is a bit of a superstar over in Japan, as you would expect. And he would be followed by a cavalcade of Japanese journalists, 40, 50 of them every single tournament. Everything you hear about Matsuyama is he's a very shy guy. He doesn't particularly like the spotlight. So he didn't really have that on him as much this week. And maybe that all just worked in his favour, that the pressure that would have been put on him on Saturday night in particular, when you have a 4-shot lead, when he would have had probably an hour, 90 minutes of interviews that he would have had to do, that wasn't there. So he was able to sleep a little bit better. But the quality of his long game is what shone through once again. And yeah, I think if you get to world number 2, you're always good enough to win a major.
The chances he took on the back 9, like you mentioned how loose the game plan was, I thought it was really bizarre as well because he took loads of unnecessary chances, but in fairness to him, when they didn't pay off, he wasn't compounding it by taking another risk. Like, I think he found the bunker on the par 5, it's 13, isn't it? And he played what looked like it didn't look like a particularly great shot, but he was just putting the ball out into a safe area to make sure that he wasn't turning a bogey into a double or a triple. And then on 15, when he went over the back, he just chipped it up towards near enough to the green. He didn't try go for it too close and send it back into the water on the other side. So it was a bizarre game plan because he was taking so many risks. But once he made the risk, he was kind of saying to himself, all right, just cut this out for the rest of this hole, take the medicine.
Yeah, he's scrambled brilliantly yesterday. It was very strange on 13 and 15 when he had such a commanding lead. Remember, he was 6 shots up with 7 holes to go. And on 13, he didn't hit a great drive. He got fortunate with the drive. He set it miles right, but it hit a tree, came back into the first cut, and you're thinking, just lay it up. But no, he went for it. He goes over the back of the green, and there's a little bit of luck there because we've seen that shot a million times where it bounces at the back of the green, and the next bounce brings it into the azaleas. And then you're looking at potentially a drop or one of these farcical scenes where you're trying to hit it out and anything that could happen. But luckily for him, the ball bounced backwards back into the rough. And as you say, he took his punishment. He took double, triple bogey out of it, the potential of sending it straight back over the green into Rays Creek, and just held it short and took his bogey. 15 was very strange. Again, at the time, a 4-shot lead. He's in the middle of the fairway, which is fair enough, but he's 230 yards from the hole. All he needs to do is even par 15 or just lay up and take a straightforward birdie to go for it and to go straight through the green, to run off down the back into the water. And again, he was sensible, he was smart. He made sure he wasn't going to go straight back from where he came from on 15. But it was such an unnecessary risk at that time. And if we're sitting here with Xander Schauffele having taken advantage, we're talking about one of the all-time Masters meltdowns. But he managed to hang on. So I think there will be a few questions asked afterwards, maybe with his caddy as to what they were thinking. I don't think he gives his caddy a huge amount of input into what exactly happens, but they were very strange decisions at a crucial time of the tournament. But his scrambling meant he got away with it. And as we said a million times already, nobody was there to take advantage.
There's a small story coming out from the quarantine, the new rules, and obviously the US going on the list. So it turns out that Shane Lowry is not going to ask his caddy Bo, who obviously everybody's familiar with after the Open last year, to be part of his team now for the next while, because he won't ask him to quarantine. He said he wouldn't do it himself. And so we don't know if any of these exemptions for elite sports people are going to be made, and if Bo would qualify, or what's the crack with this?
Well, I think everyone's in a bit of a state of flux around any manner of sports, from the Women's Six Nations this weekend and the game against France, as to whether there's going to be an exemption. So Shane Lowry's playing again this coming week. He's playing at the Heritage at Hilton Head, which is a course that should really suit his game. So the intention would be that he would have gone there and Bo would have gone there. And Shane has been living in Florida since the beginning of the year, has based himself there. He may well have had a possibility of getting home after Hilton Head for a couple of weeks if he wanted. Obviously, he now feels that that's off the table and that he's going to be stuck there until after the US Open at least, which is another couple of months away. His caddy, Bo, Shane mentioned last night, has had his first dose of the vaccine, needs to come back home to get the second dose. And also, Bo had a baby within the past year as well, so was obviously away from home and wants to get back. So Shane doesn't feel he's in a position to keep him in America. It means he's going to have a new caddy for, well, potentially for the next couple of majors, certainly for this week, unless there's a decision made, which isn't an ideal circumstance because we know what a brilliant relationship they had, though I think they were getting a little bit cranky with each other over the last couple of days at Augusta. But Bo was there when Shane crushed the field at Port Rush. So it's going to add a lot of complications, not just for golf, not just for Shane Lowry, and not having his caddy there, probably not going to have his coach. I think Neil Manship is coming back as well. They want to rush home, obviously, and get back before it kicks into place on Thursday. But Lowry mentioned as well that the Irish Open, if this happens, is going to be at real risk. In fact, it's hard to see how any international sport can take place in this country if you're going to have to quarantine for 2 weeks. Now, it seems it's a fairly straightforward measure for the minister if he wants to make an exemption. But where do you start? Where do you stop with these exemptions? I guess they're going to look at it and the benefits to the country of allowing elite sports people in and out. But for Shane Lowry in the short term, it doesn't look as though there's any easy fix.
All the Yanks are going to be vaccinated though, right?
They are. Listen, the Americans aren't going to come to the Irish Open anyways. Highly unlikely. They don't travel to Europe at the best of times. I can't imagine they're going to be in any rush to come over a couple of weeks even before the Open Championship. So I wouldn't expect any of the big name Americans to come to an Irish Open, but it's more, are the best Europeans going to come? Because the vast majority of them are going to be flying in from America or from some of those countries that are on the list at the moment. And it's all moving so fast. Maybe things
well, the
have
ones flying
improved
into
by the
America,
summer,
I would expect all to be vaccinated, to be honest. Like, that's their vaccine program rollout has been excellent. You can rock up and get the vaccine. And I assume that the majority of those golfers have been vaccinated and are getting vaccinated. So, look, it's true. It is all in flux. We'll wait and see exactly what happens with that. We should talk briefly about Rory McIlroy, and whenever that first tournament of the year happened and he was like right there and very competitive, it was like, oh, McIlroy's going to be relevant this year. But at the moment, that feels like it was a bit presumptuous. It doesn't really feel like Rory McIlroy is relevant in these big tournaments at the moment.
No, and you go back 2 years ago and even a year heading into what should have been the 2020 Masters, and Rory was the best player in the world at that stage. But since the restart, nothing has happened and it's just gone from bad to worse. And it does feel as though right now he's in the toughest spell of his career so far, probably the biggest slump of his career, not just because of results, and results haven't been good, particularly over the past month. Miscut at the players, did nothing at the World Match Play, and never looked like being a factor at this tournament over the weekend at all. But he has massive issues with his game at the moment. The biggest issues he feels of his career so far with his swing, where he's a two-way miss off the tee. There's been concerns for a long time around his iron play and his distance control, and he's brought Pete Cowan in. Everyone feels it was the right decision. He needed something. Maybe the fact it was so close to the Masters didn't give him the bounce he expected. Maybe he thought there was going to be a mental bounce from getting Pete Cowan in a fortnight before the Masters. That wasn't there. He's trying to unravel the mistakes he's made since last year's US Open, where he admitted he was heavily influenced by what Bryson DeChambeau was doing with the power and the need for speed, and Rory chasing a little bit extra yardage, which still seems like one of the most bizarre decisions Rory McIlroy could have ever made. So it was a hugely disappointing couple of days, because within 9 holes you felt this isn't going to happen. His body language wasn't great. It never is when things aren't going particularly well, and he's got a good break now. He's not going to play this week. I'd imagine he won't play for the next 3 weeks. And opinion is sort of divided as to what he does in these 3 weeks. He looks like a man who just needs to get on a flight, get home with the family, feed up, maybe not pick up a golf club for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and mentally just zone out and come back then for the next run of majors in a far better place mentally. But at the same time, he has so many problems with his game. Maybe he needs to be on the range and hitting thousands of balls, trying to unravel what has gone wrong over the last 3 or 4 months, working with Pete Cowan, working on the technicalities of the swing and figuring it out and coming in a better position, whereby he knows in 3 weeks' time there has been improvement, rather than hoping in 3 weeks' time by having a break that something's just going to magically click back into gear. But it feels a long way away now for McIlroy to be getting back winning majors. We've gone from, well, he's certainly going to hit double figures of majors, to would his career be a disappointment if he doesn't end up as Europe's greatest ever golfer? I think he can be Europe's greatest ever golfer by winning the career Grand Slam and by winning the Masters at some stage. Is he going to get to 7? Is he going to get past Seve and Nick Faldo and have more majors than anybody else from Europe? He won 4 in a very, very hot spell. He hasn't won one in well over 7 years at this stage.
Yeah.
To win another 3 feels like a mountain to climb.
It'd be one of the greatest comebacks in sport to get to that point where he would.
Well, he hasn't collapsed completely is the other thing. Like, players have gone.
He's still only in his early 30s as well, though.
But you can't just turn it on and off.
No, you can't. But he's in a slump and he's down to 13th in the world. He hasn't dropped out of the world's top 100. The biggest issue, I think, from winning majors, and you can look at his age, and the great thing about golf predictions is, he could win. He's going to be playing in the Open Championship for the next 29 years. He's going to contend in 1 or 2 of them along the way. There's no doubt about that.
Phil Mickelson hadn't won a major at this stage in his career.
I think the game has changed completely. You look at the quality of the players that are coming through. Even you look at the quality of the leaderboards compared to when Rory was winning his first major championships. The depth that is there now is at a completely different level. Every 3 months you have another superstar coming through. Look at what Will Zalatoris has done over the past week, who's done over the past 3 months, coming from the Corn Ferry Tour, the second string tour, to finish 6th at a US Open, to finish runner-up on his own at a Masters. These guys are coming out of college and they are ready-made, and they can do the things that when Rory came through, he changed the game with his power, with his poise, with the quality of his driving and the distance that he had. All these guys coming out of college now have a little bit of that. They can all drive it a long way. They're all good with their irons. They can all putt well. So I think the biggest issue for McIlroy is that there's any amount of depth. And to win 3 more majors, to win 3 would be one of the great stories from this position. Right now, you would take 1. I think he will come back. I think he will contend and win regular golf tournaments again. But to win a major, I could name 10 golfers off the top of my head right now who I feel are going to win a major in the next 2 years, whether it's John Rahm, Xander Schauffele, Will Zalatoris. All of a sudden, all of these guys are going to be in the mix.
Brooks Koepka has to come back properly from his injuries as well. Look,
and Jordan Spieth is back, baby.
Yeah, well,
so he's got to contend with that.
Okay, and I presume Golf Weekly, OTB Golf Weekly, get over to the Patreon. What was the watch along like? Any highlights you can share with us, great unwashed plebs?
We might put up a few highlights from Conor Moore, who was brilliant. We got the Conor Moore specials. We had quite a few impressions there. Troy Merritt on as well, actually. If you want a little tip for this week, Troy, his form hasn't been great this year, but he has the course record at Hilton Head, which is where the Heritage takes place. The Heritage is a strange tournament. I'm sure John will be talking about it later in the week. It's, for a lot of players, the one opportunity all year they have to win. It's very short. Luke Donald played well there all the time. McDowell has won there. Furyk. So Troy Merritt has the course record there. He's probably going to be about 250, 300 to 1.
We like them.
€1 each way. He's had major problems with his putting all year. Felt in his last tournament that maybe something clicked back into gear. It's still going to be 250, 300 to 1. It's a difficult old task. But he was brilliant. And he called Matsuyama last night. Both himself, Peter Lowry is a brilliant tipster, said 10 under par, Hideki Matsuyama got the job done.
Right. Good stuff, Nathan. You can get more of that good stuff on Golf Weekly. You need to subscribe. Get over to patreon.com/Golf Weekly, or you can get it at offthewall.com/Golf Weekly as well. Now, we're going to talk rugby with Ireland star Beibhinn Parsons next, but just want to play you this. It's Louise Galvin speaking to OTB's Aisling O'Reilly after Ireland's Six Nation opener, talking about how close-knit this Irish squad seems to be.
Something I really noticed is like the bond that they seem to have, and maybe that's through lockdown that they've had this probably more time to train, and they've had like 20 camps, I think it is. Could you notice that today, the sort of cohesiveness between them all?
Absolutely, and I guess be quite friendly with a lot of the girls, and you kind of get, without asking too much, you just get that sense from chatting to them that it's a really close-knit group. And there's still a lot of seriously talented players that weren't playing, weren't on the 23 today, so there's a lot more to come in and add to to add on the field as well. I think, like I said, Griggs has a lot of I suppose puts a lot of mass on that kind of culture side of things and have a positive team bond. I think as well they've such a talismanic leader in Ciara Griffin. They would have dealt with a lot of, I suppose, heartache with matches being postponed, World Cup qualifiers, then Six Nations, then the actual World Cup as well, and not knowing when they're going to play. But you can see that they were turning up and brought an air of professionalism to their training camps, because they looked physically in much better shape than Wales did today, and tactically just much more tuned in and much more accurate and clinical. Like if anything, at the 45-0 scoreline, you could nearly say that it flattered Wales more than Ireland. Such was the dominance that they had in periods of that game, and it could have easily pushed towards the 60-point mark. So that is certainly emblematic of the bond within the squad, and the fact that they haven't just been bitching and moaning about tournaments being postponed or games being postponed. When they've gone into camp, they've actually just put the shoulder to the wheel, knowing that whenever they were going to take the field, they were going to be preparing whatever 15 were going to be taking to it as best as possible, and they were going to put on a head of a show. And I'm really excited already for next weekend. That's
Louise Galvin and Aisling O'Reilly talking about Ireland's win against Wales. Now, Avonmore Protein Milk today launched their new campaign for 2021. Bring Your All. It's alongside Ireland and Connacht rugby star Beibhinn Parsons and Irish gymnast Rhys McClenaghan. I'm delighted to say Beibhinn Parsons is with us now. Good morning to you, Beibhinn. How are you getting on?
Good morning. How are you?
Not a bad Saturday afternoon for you guys.
Yeah, we were delighted with the win. Going away and travelling to Wales, playing Wales in their fortress is, you never underestimate them. So we're definitely glad of the win.
Not a bad try.
Yeah, glad with the try as well. The second one, Hannah Tira put it on the money, so I just had to dot it down.
The first one, though, tell us what point did you kind of think, okay, it's on here?
Yeah, I think I was dancing with the touchline, so I nearly had to put the shoulder in and make sure I wasn't pushed out to touch, and then I was lucky to get a break there, and I took the chance when I got it.
Do you know when it's coming to you that actually the finish is on here? If I beat these two, Like, is your instinct at that point to go for it, or is your instinct to kind of look for the next pass and see where your trail runner is coming from?
My first instinct is always to go for it. You know, I'm guilty of getting whitewash fever at times. As soon as I get the ball, I want to score a try. So definitely first instinct is to go for it, and then I'll look for the offload if it's on.
Do coaches ever talk to you about that and say, here, listen, you've got to be, you've got to, I don't know, because I'm interested, right? If you've got a natural finisher like you, the thing to do is to say, don't worry about the trail runners, right? Let them, if they are screaming for it so much that they're absolutely going to score it, then fine. And if there's a bit of white line fever, who cares? But maybe coaches are like, here, listen, you know, bit of white line fever there, maybe look around. What are those conversations actually like?
My coaches the whole way up have, you know, they've always encouraged me to go for the tries and to, you know, put my foot down, even if things don't look like they're on. Sometimes a gap will appear. So I've always been encouraged to just go for it. You know, maybe teammates will be screaming if it's on, and if it is, I'll pop them the ball. But yeah, no, I've always been encouraged.
It's working.
Would you ever played much further in field, Beibhinn, get on the ball a little bit kind of more centrally in the pitch, or do you prefer to have that space outside?
Yeah, working in off my 9s and 10s and getting on the ball in the midfield is something I'm trying to bring into my game. I still have to, you know, spot the gaps and make sure I'm running the right running lines and not getting in the way. So it's something I'm working on at training, and I definitely want to bring that into my game. Of course, I love having the space on the wing and being able to manipulate defenders. But I think the mix of the two makes a great winger, so I'm definitely trying to bring that into my game.
How much do you think as a player you've changed over the course of the 2.5 years since you got your first test of international rugby? Like, you were only, was it 16 at the time in that game against the USA?
Yeah, 16. So, you know, I think my game knowledge has definitely improved. Being able to position myself in the backfield, you know, that's something I struggled with when I first came in, and I was always caught out of position or things like that. So my defenses come on in leaps and bounds. And then in terms of attack, I think I've just grown a bit more confident, and my teammates around me are more confident in me as well. So it means I get a bit more ball. So yeah, I think I've just grown in confidence really, and then improved my defense and sort of, you know, being able to spot if a defender is going to kick or if they're going to take this one on and use footwork. So, you know, it comes with experience, and I've only 9 caps, and I hope to get a good few more under my belt. But yeah, things are moving in the right direction, I think.
And was it daunting at the time coming in, like being a 16-year-old coming into an international team sport at senior level? I imagine you're probably looking around going, God, this is the real deal.
Yeah, you know, I'd be lying to you if I told you I wasn't intimidated coming in those first few training camps. I was, you know, thrown in the deep end really. The girls were so experienced, and so, you know, their skill level was much higher than mine, and they knew the game a lot better than me. So yeah, that those first few camps and that first season, I was definitely, you know, awestruck by the girls, and luckily enough they took me under their wing. But I think since then I've been able to, you know, create a really good bond with them. At the time I thought it was a weird dynamic, me being so young and the age gap and everything, but now that's not even a thought. You know, I'm as close with the girls as ever, and, you know, it's a great squad to be on. And
I remember hearing as well, like, you couldn't even share a hotel room with one of your teammates when you were inside in that camp because you were 16 years old. Yeah, so COVID hasn't been that big of a change for me in that sense, because we all have to have single rooms now anyway. But yeah, so I'd room on my own. I'd be, you know, the far side of the hotel. It was madness really. So I've only ever had 2 roommates in my whole time being on the squad, because then COVID came in. I think one time Rugby Players Ireland, they're like an organisation that help us, and they came in talking about pensions and pension plans, and I was just thinking, like, this is insane. Like, I'm trying to get my maths homework done before Monday, and they're talking about pensions. So the age gap was definitely, you know, a topic of conversation at the time.
It obviously that experience has obviously stood to you now you're a 2.5-year veteran at 19. That level of experience is something that you can draw on over those 10 caps.
Yeah, definitely. I'm always picking the brains of the girls around me that have more caps and more experience. I haven't really gotten to play much at interpro or provincial level either. So, I have a lot to learn, and I'm not naive to that. I know that there's a lot of facets of the game that I need to improve. So just learning off the likes of Ali Meyler when I got to play with her in Connacht, and Emer Considine, and, trying to get as much out of training as I can.
To go back to the game at the weekend against Wales, like I was covering some of the press conferences last week, and one thing I was really struck by was the confidence that was being put out by particularly by Aoife McDermott and Catherine Dane. And certainly going into the game on Saturday, part of me was thinking, like, it was genuinely, it was a bold, there were some bold statements out there about how confident you had been over how much preparation you'd done over the course of the last year. And considering you only would have played one match in the last 12 months, there definitely would have been a little bit of pressure on you to get off to a good start in those opening 20 minutes. How were you feeling in maybe the hour or two before the match, knowing that you'd talked yourselves off a little bit and you knew you had to deliver on it?
Yeah, exactly. We had we were loud and proud that we wanted to beat Wales, and we were confident that we could if we got our own roles right and had clarity around our own systems. Yeah, exactly. We had, it was said before, we had 20 camps together. We might be a professional team, but we have all the traits of one. We show up and we work hard. We have an amazing coaching ticket, and we have top class facilities. So, we had no excuses. We had a lot of camps under our belt, huge competition within the squad. And then we got to gel with each other. So, we really did think that we have a good thing going on here, and we've improved so much since our Italy match. So we really wanted to put on a performance. So we were confident that we could as well.
I imagine COVID almost helped you then in a way, because it is a relatively inexperienced squad that has seen a huge amount of change over the course of the last 2 or 3 years. As frustrating as it probably was not being able to play a match for so long, I imagine there definitely were a lot of positives to be able to go through, was it like 20 camps over the course of these few months. And as you said, had never been able to spend that much time together as a team, just training and working on your own games.
Yeah, exactly. I've being exposed to that much training, you really get to know the quirks of the players inside and out of you. It was, we had a massive competition within the squad, and we had internal matches, so we were still getting that game time. And then in terms of fitness and strength, I think we're the strongest and fastest, fittest we've ever been because of our S&C and because of how hard we work at training. So we wanted to show that on the pitch, and we know how privileged we are to be able to fly to Wales and to play them, and the amount of background work that has to have been done to allow that to happen. And me personally, I wanted to put on a performance for the people watching at home and for the people that allowed that to happen. So we were just raring to go. I think Lindsay said we were like a kettle coming to boil. We were just wanted to blow the roof off the place.
And how are you feeling then for this weekend? I suppose, first of all, actually, has it been kind of discussed with you about what the potential arrangements could be with this mandatory quarantine? Is there a possibility that the game could be moved from Dublin?
As players, we've had to be really flexible and adaptable over the last 12 months. So we're just going to go along the process as best as we know, and as close to plan as possible. And if things change around that, we'll adapt and we'll move forward. But as far as we know, we'll be playing France on the weekend.
All right. And then just in terms of the game itself, like, Wales was an excellent performance, but France is another step up entirely when you saw what they did against Wales. And I imagine raring to play them, given the fact that the opportunity was taken away from you at the tail end of last year to play them.
Yeah, exactly. France are a whole different beast, and they'll come at us with a lot more challenges, and we'll definitely be tested in that match. But we want to make Donnybrook our fortress, and we don't want to lose at home. We want to put on a big performance, and we think that we can. So, you know, we're not getting ahead of ourselves after one win with Wales, but we also, you know, that gave us confidence and we have momentum now going into the weekend.
Beibhinn, the point about France and the point about England as well is that there's a level of professionalism that has been invested in the senior international women's team over the last period of time. We're kind of in the middle of the level of professionalism that we have. Would you ultimately like to see a fully professionalised, full-time Irish squad where all of your teammates are doing nothing but playing rugby for Ireland?
Yeah, you know, yeah, definitely. But in terms of professionalism, you know, we're chasing that as players. We train in the same place as the men do, you know, the high performance centre. We have amazing facilities, unreal coaching arrangement, and we train like professionals. So in that sense, you know, we look at ourselves and see how much can we push professionalism ourselves and the way that we carry ourselves. So of course, yeah, it's something that you would love to see and you know, it'd love to be an option, but for right now, we look at ourselves and we put the onus on ourselves to be professional. And
in a weird way, COVID stopping everybody from being able to go to work or go to college might have allowed this Ireland team right now to catch up a little bit on the professionalism of England and France.
Yeah, exactly. For me, it's been great. You know, I can make my own timetable and arrange my lectures at times that suit my training. I've been able to dip into the sevens program as well, and they're obviously a professional side that train full time. So, you know, only for COVID, I'm allowed to do that. So for me, it's been great. And I know the other girls, they have time off work. You know, that's more time off their feet, allowing them to recover and be rejuvenated for training. So, you know, it's been good to us.
In terms of the college experience, because obviously people will be familiar with last year was Leaving Cert for you, and you were probably going to miss a few games anyway at the end of the Six Nations because of those commitments. How has the whole college experience been when you can't really go, or did you even get to go a little bit?
Yeah, I think I've been into college 3 times. It's a weird experience, you know, Zoom university, constant breakout rooms, and you're trying to get to know each other over Zoom and WhatsApp. It's been weird. It definitely has. And I hope next year we get a bit more in college experience. But in terms of going out and stuff, it suited me great because I wouldn't be able to go anyway. And I don't have that fear of missing out. So it's actually been a blessing in disguise, I think.
So no FOMO. This is going to be the best year of your college results ever. Is that what you're just putting that out there right now? For in future years, you might actually have to do a little bit of going out just to get to know people.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, listen, Beibhinn, congratulations on a brilliant performance at the weekend. One last thing I did want to ask you. You said that you kind of were conscious of people watching back at home. The game was on terrestrial TV, so it will have had a huge audience on an afternoon when Rachel Blackmore obviously wins the Grand National as well. So it was potentially one of the greatest days of women's Irish sport ever. Are you conscious of that? Do you feel any of that?
You know, I am, because my mom, I was on the phone to her yesterday and she said, you know, it was just, what a weekend for women in sport. It was an amazing weekend, and I think that even the 20 by 20 campaign, it's pushed a huge momentum behind all of us, and we feel that as players. We feel that people are backing us and they're behind us. And, you know, coming from Ballinasloe, they've always been had my back and supported me, but now I feel it from the wider public. So it's been great. You know, we love the support and we welcome it with open arms.
Well, listen, it's going to continue and it's going to continue to grow. Great stuff, Beibhinn. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
It's Beibhinn Parsons there talking to us as part of the Bring Your All campaign with Avonmore Protein Milk. It is 8 minutes past 9 this morning here on OTB AM. Plenty more to come. It's the Sports Breakfast Show from OTB, brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio across the rest of the day. The former Donegal footballer Luke Keaney is our OTB Gold at 1 o'clock today, talking about his hip replacement. Our State of the Union is from last season with Jerome Garces and John Lacey. A great insight into the difficulties that international referees have. The Split Season, our documentary series on what it was actually like to be involved at the top level of the game, is hurling. OTB Gold tonight is Lance Armstrong at 6 o'clock. Don't know if you saw the story over the weekend where the head of the French anti-doping agency, from the middle part of the noughties all the way through to the middle part of the teens, said that he didn't think that it was just EPO that the cyclists were on in Lance's era, that he thought there was something more sinister involved, perhaps something that might make a little whirring noise. But as you'll see in that interview tonight at 6 o'clock, it's a stupid question. Don't ask him. Do not ask Lance Armstrong if anybody even offered him a motor at all. And then the show's live tonight with Joe from 7, looking back. And of course, a very busy weekend of sport. We haven't really even touched on the rowers, for example, who won gold in the European Championships as well. So you can listen to OTB Sports Radio all day long on the OTB Sports app. You can listen to it on your Alexa, on your Google Home. You just say, Alexa, play OTB Sports and OTB Sports Radio, and she will. A reminder, of course, Golf Weekly will be recording their special Masters review pod later on today. You have to be subscribed to the Golf Weekly Patreon to get that. It is 9:08 here. It is time now for the Gillette Performance Rankings.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
OTB Sports in your pocket. Listen to OTB Sports Radio 24/7.
Until that habit is broken, do you not realise how crazy those things were?
Watch your favourite OTB videos.
The benefit of being suspended, me and Scholesy were out every night, probably night before the game.
Read all the latest sports news and opinions, all in one place, the OTB Sports app. Listen, watch, read. Wherever you are, we're always with you. The OTB Sports app, available to download now from your app store.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, browse through dozens of new player markets, all powered by Opta. Shots on target, left foot, right foot, headed goals, assists and more. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
I know as well you were talking to me pre-match about a young Irish player who's coming through the ranks at Norwich City. We might see a couple of Irish players going down from the Premier League this season. Unfortunately, it looks like John Egan and Enda Stevens will be going down with Sheffield United. But Norwich City will be bouncing straight back up. They, of course, have a couple of Irish players, but one lad who's been making waves over he started their last 3 matches, Andrew Omabamidele. And he's a player you've been watching very closely, and you think he's going to make big waves for Ireland as well.
Yeah, obviously when a player like that comes on the radar, you do. They narrowed him, he does a bit of investigation. Who is he? Where does he come from? And obviously knew that he was playing underage for Ireland. He would have played a lot more now for the 19s but the games were called off because of COVID. So I watched him play for Ireland in the 21s against Wales. He was decent, he was okay. Wasn't a great game in the sense of it was in an open training ground as such, but he done okay. But I watched him against Preston in a 1-1 draw, and then subsequently he kept his stead in the team, and that he's been outstanding. He is really, really exciting footballer, and you want to play out from the back. He's so comfortable on it. He looks like I hate giving players tags and that, but he looks like something like a young Rio Ferdinand. He looks that good. He's got bits to learn in terms of his upper body strength could be better, but he's 18 playing against men. But he's so calm on the ball, he's so assured on the ball. His passing range is excellent. I believe he could, I'd like to think the 4 or 5 games now I've watched him, I think he could play in like a number 6. He could be a Declan Rice type player. It'd be interesting to see. So he is one of the most exciting young players I've seen in a long, long time coming through the Irish setup. I wouldn't say he's under the radar, but because it's championship football, people aren't commenting too much on it. My only concern is that he would probably develop so much better if Norwich, ironically, were a championship club for another year. And when he goes to the Premiership, all his mistakes and his little errors could be found out and he could find himself out of the team. Hopefully not. But by God, have we got an exciting talent on our hand in this player. He is, people say you can't play out from the back and all of this stuff. Our kids are being brought up that way, and he is the exact example of it. Maybe it's too early for our senior international team, a different argument, but our players are being brought up the right way, and he is one of the most outstanding centre-halves I've seen in a long, long time in youth and Irish football coming through. He's well on his way to being all that, and I believe he's a great kid as well. Everyone from Leeds tell me he's a great person. That's a big important part of it when you're hearing that about his international managers and that, saying he's a great person. So very excited about him, and Hopefully I haven't given him the kiss of death, but really looking forward to seeing him coming through.
Yeah, Kildare doing their bit for the future of the Irish international team. That's Vinny Perth there talking about the Irish underage and Norwich City defender Andrew Omobamidele. Vinny was on commentary duty for OTB Sports alongside Stephen Doyle as Man United turned it around to beat Spurs 3-1, and hopefully we'll see Andrew in the Premier League with Norwich next season. Now, time for the Gillette Performance Rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Right, so the Gillette Performance Rankings, the premise is pretty simple. We ask you over the weekend to send us what you think should be in the red for the bad performances, in the amber for the, okay, grand, yeah, or green for good. And we have a lot of contenders for green, some contenders for red this week as well, and we might find it tricky enough to shoehorn somebody in the middle there, Neil. But what have you gone with for the red so far?
Going to start off, Ger, and bear in mind, people, as well, this is my Gillette Performance Rankings debut. Bear with me. We're going to go with José Mourinho in the red, José Mourinho and Spurs. It was bizarre watching it all unfold yesterday because it felt like I'd seen that movie so many times before with Spurs getting that goal in the first half. And bizarrely, it felt like Man United were clinging on for the halftime break at that stage because they'd had their own goal ruled out. They were starting to get a little bit ratty. They'd conceded. Bruno Fernandes was starting to be a little bit petulant. He had a little kind of push out at one of the Spurs players, and you were going, oh, this could be one of those days where Jose pulls it out all over again. And the second half comes around and Spurs they sit back, they try to protect the lead and just invited United on. And from there was only one winner. And as we were talking about with David Meyler, like, it's hard. It really is hard to see, regardless of what happens in the League Cup final, even if they get a bit of silverware, like, what's the end game with them? Where's it all going?
Well, so we've obviously been speaking about Mourinho and his season at Spurs over the last 5-6 weeks in particular, talking about what happens next. And there is a belief that they might be stuck with him because the amount of money that it will take to prize him away is so great that rather than spend the money sacking him, they might give him one final opportunity in a full stadium next year to see what happens. They do have Harry Kane under contract, so he can leak that he will leave if they don't finish in the top four. All he wants over the course of the weekend. And it was interesting that it was Sky who were reporting that, you know, and Sky obviously don't report that stuff willy-nilly because they are Premier League rights holders and they need to be very cognizant of their relationship with the clubs. So there's obviously no smoke without fire when it comes to Harry Kane wanting to leave, but he just can't leave. I'm sure there's no clause in his contract saying if we're not in the Champions League, you have to sell me. And as far as I know, there certainly has never been a published buyout clause figure in his deal. So what's he going to do? I think it's not a zero chance that José Mourinho and Harry Kane are locked together at the start of next season, at least for the first 6 to 10 games to see what happens.
I'd actually disagree. I would say I cannot see a situation where both Jose and Harry Kane are there at the start of next season. Because the way I would look at it, Daniel Levy has always been an incredibly shrewd man when it comes to these things. And I would say, now, look, we're kind of having this discussion on the basis that Harry Kane doesn't really want to be involved if they're not playing Champions League football and if Jose is still there next year. That's the given we're taking at the moment. So I cannot see how Daniel Levy would sit there and be like, okay, our star striker, our captain, does not want to be here and play under this manager. This manager isn't really actually going to be bringing us any further, and he's making our captain and star player unhappy. If it came down to the fact Harry Kane would a new manager help things out and starting afresh, I absolutely think Daniel Levy would take that hit, and I think he'd be smart enough to realise that, why are teams so reluctant to? We always talk about the huge payout that they're going to have to give managers for sacking a manager, but we talk about, they'll pick him up for 60-70 million quid. Talk about a player. Like, what's the difference?
The difference is that the value in the player you can write off, you can amortise that in your balance sheet, and then hopefully you can recoup some of that money in the transfer fee. With the manager, it's dead money and you never get any value back for it. No one's going to give you money to, there is generally some offset language, whereas if Jose gets a job, then you stop paying him the money.
take the hit. Take the hit.
I would agree with you, but like you say, Daniel Levy really shrewd. He only got 25 million for Christian Eriksen when Christian Eriksen was valued at like 3 times that or twice that at least the previous 18 months, and he just wouldn't sell. He wouldn't sell to anybody in England, and he wanted to be a big dog. And it was he's the one who went out and got Mourinho. He thought, oh, we've made it now. We've got José Mourinho, one of the greatest managers of all time. And you know, while Mourinho's legacy is damaged with each passing failure, there was a time when his vitality and aggression and nastiness, the teams I'm talking about that played for him, was of its time the best. I actually thought that when Kane and Son were ripping it up for the first 5-6 weeks of the season, that maybe Mourinho had stumbled into the perfect situation for him. It doesn't seem that way anymore.
You used 3 very important words there about talking about Jose and his style. Of its time.
Yeah.
Of its time.
Yeah.
And the problem is that, like, I remember back to when he was appointed to replace Mauricio Pochettino back in 2019, and I would say the vast majority of people at the time pretty much called what is happening at the moment. That things will go well for a little while, but ultimately, and it's the same with Jose at every single job. It's why I would be so reluctant to actually appoint him at a club, is that even if he does come in and wins you a League Cup, I mean, come on. Even if he comes in and does that, ultimately, when he leaves, it doesn't matter what he has done in the past. When he departs your club, it is a bad departure.
It has not been good. He has absolutely lived down to the worst of expectations, and yet
he's the Homer Simpson driving across the bridge and throwing that match over his shoulder gif.
And yet last week there was a point where in running they were still 4th when they were 2-1 up. I think Vinny Perth pointed that out as well. It was like football's a very fickle game. So look, you would not expect them to make the Champions League, and at this point you would not expect them to win the League Cup. But stranger things have happened. It doesn't look like they're going to be able to make the Champions League at this point. That game yesterday was so crucial for them in terms of that swing. So, okay, I absolutely accept he should be in the red. What's next?
We're going to go Dundalk, because this start of the season is getting pretty alarming, to the point where we even had, Shane Keegan being quoted in papers over the course of the weekend talking about how the management team are here and they have points to prove. And, Aidan Fitzmaurice is writing in the Independent this morning, the Dundalk management team are going to be in charge for another week at least. Like, it's
week to week.
Haven't won this season. It's week to week at this stage, and we're only 4 games into the season. They've picked up 1 point across those 4 matches as well. And it's just, there was so much confusion at the start of the season over the management situation, who is actually running the show there. We have Shane Keegan officially as the manager. People are wondering, is it actually Filippo Giovagnoli who is the manager who's barking out the instructions on the sideline? Jim Magilton then as the director of football or performance director. Okay, in fairness, that seems to be a solid long-term appointment, but it's what's happening on the pitch is bizarre. There was a big investment of a lot of foreign players over the course of the last couple of months as well. And, a lot of those, they obviously need time to get used to each other, because they're coming from all corners of the world and from Europe as well.
Derry City are bottom of the table at the moment, and they have a game in hand on Dundalk. And if they were to win that game, it's against Rovers, so maybe they won't. But if they were to win that game, then Dundalk will be bottom of the table after 4 games, after all the investment, after all of the hoo-ha about the progress the club have made. It seems you can get things blown off course pretty quickly.
It certainly is. And we have the stats here in front of us. When they had Vinny Perth in charge last season, it was 14 points from 9 games. Since then, 13 points over the course of the last 13 games. And, 3 wins in 15 points in the 17 games since the pandemic.
That's all coming from John Dodge on Twitter. Dundalk in 2020 under Vinny Perth, 14 points in 9 games. Dundalk since 13 points in 13 games. Since the pandemic, 15 points in 17 games. 3 wins in those games against relegated Shells and Cork, and against the side currently bottom Derry. So not a ringing endorsement for how things have changed, and thanks to John Dodge, for those stats as well. I just want to remind you, of course, that the whole point of the performance rankings is that it's a competition. Every Monday, we're looking for your suggestion for the performance rankings. You can suggest somebody for any of the 3 categories, for red, for orange, or indeed for green. We're going to pick a winner from our audience a little bit later on, where you'll win a Gillette starter pack. You can enter every weekend. Just send us who you think should make the performance rankings, and we'll pick a winner on Monday's OTB AM. So, very clear. José and Spurs in the red, Dundalk in the red. What's in orange? What was like, yeah, okay.
Masters Sunday. Masters Sunday is in the orange. I don't think you can. It wasn't bad enough to put it into the red. It's too disrespectful to the Masters until Hideki Matsuyama and his great triumph for Asia and for Japan. Because I did see, in fairness, a lot of people mentioning on Twitter yesterday, this must have been what, like, most other countries felt when Shane Lowry was strolling towards the Open Championship on the final day in 2019, while we were all like, this is the greatest final round of a major there's ever been, as Shane Lowry just coasts his way through the back 9 at Royal Portrush.
Having the crack, essentially. I think... Is the drama where he absolutely lashes the ball into the water on 15, people are thinking John van de Velde level meltdown at the Open. Was that not enough to boost this was it not enough to creep it into green? There wasn't enough drama in this for you?
Oh no, that's the mini meltdown on 15 was what probably crept it into amber rather than red, to be honest, because there really was not much happening for the couple of hours before that. And it was the fact we did get those. It was only 5 minutes of oh my God, it's happening. This collapse, this comeback is coming, because Schauffele had birdie, or was about to birdie 4 holes in a row. And as we discussed with Nathan, Matsuyama he'd given us a glimpse that he was taking on these unnecessary risks by going for it on 13 and getting away with it and only dropping the 1 shot on that occasion. And all of a sudden, he absolutely flutes one over the back of the green on 15 into the water. And you're left with, oh, here it is, it's on. And then it was just the letdown of, like Schauffele. He couldn't even give us 20 minutes.
Couldn't give us the walk to the green.
Minutes. Yeah.
Right. They're definitely in the orange this week. In green, we've got Irish Rugby and Rachel Blackmore. Where do you want to start?
We'll start with Irish Rugby. This was picking the green was actually the toughest part of the weekend, because there were so many things that legitimately could have squeezed in there. I didn't even want to just go with Leinster or anything like that, because or just with Ireland, because you had Ulster winning as well. You'd run Nogara with their great performance with La Rochelle. It was just a fantastic weekend overall for Irish Rugby, including Ireland's win against Wales as well. Starting with Leinster, I'm going to talk about that mainly because that was the one I saw in full on Saturday evening. And to get back to the Champions Cup semi-final is just going to be huge for them. And they are favourites now to win what's going to be a record 5th title. I can see some of the texts coming in from people who've made suggestions like individual performances. There were so many individual performances. Robbie Henshaw is just playing the rugby of his life at the moment. Ronan Kelleher is looking absolutely sensational. He was so good carrying, there were so many dominant collisions that he won over the course of that game, both tackles and carries. And then he picked off a couple of really, really important penalties on the ground as well. He was absolutely brilliant. I actually thought Devin Toner had a great game, and it feels like he's probably going to be leaving the province at the end of this season. And I hope to God he isn't retiring, because he still has so much rugby left in his legs.
Yeah, I mean, I think Leinster could definitely use him next year. I realise that there's probably a bit of a backlog building up behind him, but for big games like this, when you need somebody completely reliable, there's been no sign of a diminution in his ability at this level. So Josh van der Fleer was my man of the match. Superb game for Leinster, says Ger on our Instagram channel. Tom O'Flaherty, Exeter, Lowe and Larmour were the stars. Tom O'Flaherty, ironically, great weekend for Irish Rugby. One of the most Irish-sounding names ever to play against us. And absolutely, he was sensational, I thought.
Yeah, he was brilliant as well. The 2 tries were excellently finished from him as well. And there were a few, it wasn't as if Leinster just battered a poor Exeter. There was some really good Exeter performances in the pack, in particularly. I thought Johnny Gray was absolutely outstanding. He had to come off early on in the second half, but I remember looking at the stats at half-time. First half alone, Johnny Gray logged 15 tackles, which is absolutely whopping. Josh van der Fleer put in 22 over the course of the game. Johnny Gray's outstanding. Johnny Hill was really good for Exeter as well. And then across onto the other performances like Ireland, we spoke with Beibhinn Parsons and Ulster. I bizarrely, I only caught the last. I was travelling home from watching the Leinster game, and when I got in home, there was around 55 minutes played in the Ulster match. They just conceded a try to go down by 6, and from what I saw over the last 25 minutes of that match, all I was thinking was, like, how on earth were they down by 6 when I started watching this? Because they were absolutely unbelievable in the last 25 minutes. The pace that they played at, they made some good substitutions. I thought Tom O'Toole was excellent when he came on, but there was just a relentlessness to the way that they were playing. The speed of the phases they were going through, the dominance they were getting in the collisions, getting over the gain line almost every time, and so many of their big players were looking sharp. I thought Jacob Stockdale looked really good from the bits I saw of him. Yeah. And as we said with Alan Quinlan, they have a huge opportunity now to get some silverware.
Rachel Blackmore is in green. This could be Rachel Blackmore and Henry de Bromhead. What an incredible year they've had. De Bromhead had the 1 and 2 again. 100-1 shot second. But really, Rachel Blackmore is the story of the weekend. She's obviously on all the front pages yesterday, on all the sports supplements today again. An incredible story, an incredible year. Like, the type of year that very few Irish sports people have ever had.
Yeah, it was. And I was presenting yesterday, and it was an absolute pleasure to be in there, like, looking through the front and back pages. Like, as I said on it as well, it was one of those days where on Sundays when I come in and we're doing the Sunday paper review, if I see that there is an Irish sports story on both the front and back pages, it's either something absolutely brilliant or we're calling the solicitors to just double check that we're okay to speak about it. And thankfully it was the former yesterday. But and even some of the quotes that Rachel Blackmore had afterwards, like they just perfectly summed things up. The line that I don't feel male or female, I don't even feel human. And then I thought just the most beautiful one was, I just feel so lucky to be Rachel Blackmore. Like, she's just living a dream at the moment for these last few months.
Yeah, it's really sensational stuff, and it couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of people as well. Henry de Bromhead has just had a season to die for, potentially the greatest training season of all time, and he's not one of the powerhouse trainers that we would traditionally have said, oh, it's like Jigginstown back in Gordon Elliott. It's like, this is a long, hard grind to get to the point where he's got to, and they absolutely deserve absolutely all of the credit that's coming their way and the success. It was absolutely brilliant to see. So some other suggestions out there. Shane O'Connor says the Irish men's lightweight double gold in European rowing championships. Yeah, pictures in the back of the papers again this morning. Ronan O'Gara, the calls for O'Gara to get the Ireland gig and to get various gigs in Ireland, they're not going to go away anytime soon. That's from Kerry GA fan page. Stuart Dallas says D. Scanlon, unbelievable coolness from Dallas to finish the way he did. And Emma says Orlo Dwyer scored a goal as the Lions made the AFLW final. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the week as well. A reminder, of course, OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Congratulations to Duncan Lehan, who his shout for both Rachel Blackmore and Henry de Bromhead to be this week's Gillette Performance Rankings was chosen as our winner. So Duncan, we'll be in touch. You've won a Gillette starter pack.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
Tomorrow morning from 7:30 we're going to be talking Champions League. There's fallout from the European Rugby weekend and much more as well besides. Right now though, we're talking more about Ireland's Six Nations win against Wales on Saturday night. Here's Louise Galvin.
So Louise, a brilliant result for Ireland. They've got their Six Nations off to a great start. What did you make of the game?
Yeah, I thought it was a fantastic result. I thought that's the best performance that we've seen from Ireland in a few seasons, actually. I think it's really kick-started their Six Nations for 2021. And all the more impressive when you consider they haven't played in 6 months for a lot of these girls. More than that, 13 months with no domestic action as well, unless, the few players playing in the Premiership. So really, really impressive. And it wasn't just the scoreline that was impressive. It's the manner of the performance. I'm sure we'll get into a bit of detail. I'm sure Adam Griggs has plenty that he'll want to look at as well, particularly from the second half. But just how they hit the ground running. Like coming into the game, I expected there might be a little bit of almost like jitters or, unforced errors early in the game, just as girls were kind of settling into it. But actually we saw the opposite, where they started off at a frenetic pace, really clinical, with a lot of variety to the game as well. And actually in the second half, we saw some of those, some more of those unforced errors that we might have expected earlier in the game. But they managed to pull themselves out of it and finish a bit stronger as well, which will mean they're bringing plenty of confidence into next weekend's game, winner takes all against France.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really did. I wondered, would they take a while maybe just to settle in, like you said? And it was the complete opposite. They just took off all guns blazing. But then in the second half, there was so many chances that they could have taken. And as they go up against stronger opposition, they're going to want to take those chances.
Yeah, and I think, you know, with the first half as well, with some of the tries that we saw, you would question the Welsh defence. You know, we saw two fantastic individual tries, one from Beibhinn Parsons and one from Eamon Constantine. Again, you'd question, you know, you wouldn't see a French defence letting them in that easy. But, you know, fair play to them. They made that opportunity and took it themselves. In the second half, Wales were better. They were more, they had a lot more line integrity, and they started to come up off their line a little bit more. And when we weren't getting those easy kind of, you know, beating the first up tackler, we took a little while to settle into the game, and we probably forced a lot of handing errors through forced offloads. And I think maybe, you know, I know there's a lot of competition within the squad. I mean, the 23 girls there today, they're only representative of the 35 girls that have been training, and more so over the last 20 camps that we keep hearing about. And they'll want to cement their place. So I think girls sometimes are maybe forcing it a little bit to maybe stand out a bit purely to make sure that they're on the pitch next weekend as well. But then they settle down into, you know, being a little bit more direct, retaining ball possession, clearing out that ruck. We still saw, you know, once or twice reaching for the line and just probably a little bit over exuberant and not quite making it, and coughing up what should have been try scoring opportunities. But again, then because our scrum was so dominant and our line out was turning over a lot of Welsh ball, it meant we were consistently getting possession back, and as I say, gladly finished the game out well with the tries through Dorothy Wall and Hannah Tyrrell.
Yeah, definitely. Just speaking on the scrum, it was so powerful, and you could see when they had a moment that it was so powerful and they got a try from it, you know, really pushed them on. That's new, and it's exciting to see.
It's so exciting to see. Those girls are just dying for a game. You know, you can see in every single one of their faces, and you have to win those little moments in the game. You can see they're a really, really tight-knit group. And I know Griggs would have worked a lot on that. He's a big believer in kind of that team culture and team bond, and they'd have a lot of their own little sayings within the group that, you know, are specifically and only for them. And I think you can see that on the pitch, that they're quite a tight-knit group, and certainly the forward pack, you know, a scrum penalty, it's usually not just one person, you know, it's 8 people together pushing really, really hard, and it's the timing of that, and to win those penalties, you can see what it means to them. And it's kind of, you're in such close proximity to your opposition that showing that emotion and showing that, like grimacing, it's really almost in the face of the opposition that we have one up on you, because the scrum can be a little bit of I suppose a psychological warfare as well as the physical battle.
Yeah, you could really see that in Lindsay Peat. Like she's such a force, and like you could see her that like shouting and just that bringing them on once they did have a moment like that. She's just immense. You know, she'll never retire, will she? She's just unbelievable.
The shape she's in, people, you know, would all mention she's 40. It doesn't matter. The shape she's in is just phenomenal. And I've played with and against Lindsay, I'm happy to say, in 3 sports, and she's just an incredible athlete. And the power that she possesses and what she puts into her game to keep her body fit. And you have to remember the second last game these girls played against England, she broke her ankle. And to say she could have easily, with COVID, with the pressures on work, she's at a bar at home, her little son and her wife Claire, and, you know, plenty of pressure. She could have stepped away from the squad, but instead she's just such a competitive individual, and she knows she can contribute so much. She got herself back into fitness, and, you know, she has that position, that lucid prop position nailed down. And we didn't even really, you know, we got to see her carry a bit today, but you know, I think we used our backline well. We didn't get to see her as much in broken open field running, because she is such an acceleration on her, like, and such a difficult woman to take down, that she's someone you definitely want to go to war with.
Yeah. Hannah Tyrrell, you know, she was showing her Gaelic football skills with her kicking. her kicking was brilliant to watch. And in the first half, when she found Beibhinn in the corner to get that second try for Beibhinn, that was just brilliant to see. And then all of her conversions as well. How good was she today?
Yeah, Hannah was excellent. I think deserved a player of the match award. I think for her, she actually hasn't played a lot in 10, so even at club level. So it just shows that the, I suppose, magnitude of the performance that she's put in. But Hannah's a real confident player. Again, lucky enough to have played with her plenty of times, and she's a real baller. And what's really nice about her at 10 is she's not just a distributor. She'll really take the ball to the line, and we saw with, I think, Emer Constantine's first try, Hannah made a lovely gap where she saw the 10 drift off her and said, yeah, I'm going to take that gap. That's her instinct. And she made it to probably the 5 metre line. And then it was a case of, the girls are really clinical around the breakdown area, quick recycle. Catherine Dane cut out 2 or 3 players with the width for pass, and they were pretty much queuing up out in the wing then to score it. So Hannah, she'll take the ball onto the line, she can deliver it, she can marshal the forward pods around her, she can kick, and she, having been a back three player, she understands how much the back three can contribute and the skills that they have. And she knows you want to get into the game early. So I think she'd be much more likely to, I suppose, play the back three and play with as well, just because she's that experience of being out there and knowing, we have a serious opportunity there, but actually generally it's been kept tight. So I think she'll be more, I suppose, more likely to actually use those opportunities to get the ball wide when it's on.
Yes, definitely. And we've seen Eve Higgins, Emily Lane and Stacey Flood making their debuts today. How do you think they got on?
Yeah, I thought really good. I thought Eve picked some really nice lines. I think that, she had a few knock-ons, a few unforced errors, and she probably won't be happy with that. But you can nearly see it in her that, listen, Eve has brilliant hands. She is, she's not poor catching the ball at all. I think it was just, game day nerves, wanting to make a really good impact. What's a positive for me, from what I can see, she was picking really good lines. She was just nearly thinking of what she was going to do next. And that's not abnormal for someone just kind of stepping up into a different 15s environment. But I expect her, to get selected again next week, and I don't expect her to be making those unforced errors. I thought Stacey did really well. She came on at 10 as well. Yeah. Another girl, she's, a footballing background, well able to play the game. And even, Hannah's try, Hannah moved to full back, but Stacey did really well to play to the line and get her on an outside line as well. To put Hannah away. And then Emily's a great little player as well, a lovely little snipe as soon as she got into the game. She might look small, but I'm telling you, this girl is not afraid of contact. She's not afraid of a tap and go, and it's brilliant for them to get on the field and get a taste of the action. But I know it's their debut from a 15's point of view, but you wouldn't expect the same kind of maybe nerves. They've played plenty of times from an international jersey, so it's just kind of a different environment, a different pressure. And I thought they all did well. Listen, throughout the team, we could go through it. Vast majority of our players, I played their players. Again, the engine room, I thought Nick Friday and Aoife McDermott did really well in the second row, put a lot of pressure on their line out. Our back row was phenomenal. Junior Griffin there coming up with a block down and catching the ball like this difficult skill, but she's a Kerry woman, so she obviously pulled that, brought that up from home. And Dorothy Wall made some ferocious tackles, bone crunching tackles, and big strong carries as well. But Catherine Dane was excellent distribution, really consistent, and just in general, when we got that direct carry gain line, speed of recycle, that's when we were able to play our back line into the game. I think in the second half, when we just got a little bit more, they put on a little bit more line speed, they tightened up their defence a bit. We probably tried to force a little bit. We nearly got used to just beating their first up tacklers, and we probably just needed to go back to having a bit of depth, getting the gain line, and back to what worked well at the beginning of the first half. Which I think we did by the end of the game, even, bearing in mind the changes that we had. Maybe a few things our Adam Griggs won't be as happy about, a few times that we're in really good position in their red zone and we're just going off the feet at the ruck. Again, is it over exuberance to clear out a player? But referees are looking for this. They don't want to see you diving on the ground. They don't want to see you flopping onto a ruck. So just to have a bit more accuracy around that area, and I think that would lead to, again, more clinical try scoring opportunities.
Absolutely. And just speaking on the debuts, because it's great we have so many, 3 now today. for you, say, looking back, making your debut, whether it was the 7s or the 15s, was there any one that was memorable to you that, I don't know, the nerves or excitement were something else?
Yeah, I didn't expect to be speaking about myself now at all.
Just that I throw it in.
Yeah, I suppose Sevens debut was a long time ago. And it would have been with some of the girls on the field today. I think I've made my, I suppose with Sevens, you would have made your competitive debut, but it was a season before we were on the World Series. And I think when I made my World Series debut, there was about 6 of us making it on at the same time, and Stacey Flood would have been there. And Emer Constantine was getting her 7s World Series debut that day as well. So there'd have been 2 girls playing today. And then, 15s. I actually remember I was an unused sub in a Six Nations game for my first game togging out. So that was a bit of an emotional roller coaster, because you're kind of hoping you're stepping onto the field. We were at home against France in Donnybrook, and we won an arm wrestle. It was 2017, I'm going to say. I think it was 2017 Six Nations, and I think we won something like 9-8, very tight, very close game. And there wasn't that many changes made, so it was kind of an emotional roller coaster, because early on the sideline just wishing the girls to ring, going, oh my god, I could be going on here at any second. And it wasn't to be. For otherwise, I ended up going back over with the 7th squad, and it was actually in the World Cup that year that I made my debut. So I suppose that was particularly special as well.
Amazing.
Making it to the World Cup, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And so the girls, something I really noticed is like the bond that they seem to have, and maybe that's through lockdown that they've had this probably more time to train, and they've had like 20 camps, I think it is. Could you notice that today, the sort of cohesiveness between them all?
Absolutely. And I guess it'd be quite friendly with a lot of the girls, and you kind of get, without asking too much, you just get that sense from chatting to them that it's a really close-knit group. And there's still a lot of seriously talented players that weren't playing, weren't on the 23 today, so there's a lot more to come in and add to to add on the field as well. I think, like I said, Griggs has a lot of I suppose puts a lot of mass on that kind of cultural side of things and have a positive team bond. I think as well they've such a talismanic leader in Ciara Griffin. They would have dealt with a lot of, I suppose, heartache with matches being postponed, World Cup qualifiers, then Six Nations, then the actual World Cup as well, and not knowing when they're going to play. But you can see that they were turning up and brought an air of professionalism to their training camps, because they looked physically in much better shape than Wales did today, and tactically just much more tuned in and much more accurate and clinical. Like, if anything, at the 45-0 scoreline, you could nearly say that it flattered Wales more than Ireland. Such was the dominance that they had in periods that game, and it could have easily pushed towards the 60-point mark. So that is certainly emblematic of the bond within the squad, and the fact that they haven't just been bitching and moaning about tournaments being postponed or games being postponed. When they've gone into camp, they've actually just put the shoulder to the wheel, knowing that whenever they were going to take the field, they were going to be preparing whatever 15 were going to be taking to it as best as possible, and they were going to put on a head of a show. And I'm really excited already for next weekend. Yeah,
speaking of next weekend, today Wales really weren't that great. It's going to be a completely different game next weekend against France. How do you think the girls will do? I'm just really excited. France are a fantastic team, and they've a serious squad depth. They obviously put in quite a dominant performance against Wales last weekend, but they'll be looking at that scoreline and at that performance and saying, God, Ireland can even improve from that, because we did have a 20-minute spell in the second half where we were a little bit just a little bit scattered and not as clinical. So I think France will be quite worried coming over to Dublin. I think this time of year, the game was played in Astro there as well, so we're going to be back on Donnybrook at the 4G, which is brilliant. It's going to suit Ireland down to the ground, the way that we're playing the game. Now that'll suit France as well. They like to, jouer. But I think one thing with France is, their French 7 squad, they're in Dubai the last 2 weekends, and originally with Six Nations, they'd named a lot of dual players within that squad, and they've now gone back to 7s. Now they have a lot of depth. It didn't seem to hinder them too much when they played Wales, but there are a few players that they would normally have, like Druin at 10,
that they won't have next weekend at the way they're going. So that'll be positive for Ireland as well.
Brilliant. Well, Louise, thank you so much. We get off to a great start, and hopefully next weekend is just the same.
Absolutely. Go on the girls.
So Leinster through to the semi-finals of the Heineken Champions Cup after a 12-point win away to the Exeter Chiefs at Sandy Park. Johnny Murphy was watching this game for us on OTB Sports, and Johnny, an absolutely brilliant victory for Leinster after what had been a disastrous start.
Yeah, it was. For them to come back the way they did after the first 11 minutes of the game, and then control the tempo. They quickened it up when they wanted to. They played out of their 22 in the second half of the first half. They played out of their 22 rather than looking to kick. And then you look at how they control the tempo the last 25 minutes. I thought it was a great display. They've obviously have plenty to work on in terms of their defensive sets early on in both halves. But for me, it was a really, really good victory.
What was it that was happening at the start of both the first half and the second half? Because they conceded 3 tries in the first, 8 minutes of the first half and then the first 2 minutes of the second half. The bulk of the points Exeter scored throughout the match were pretty much all in those first few minutes of either half. So what were Leinster doing that was so slow at the start of that, and how did they kind of recharge things and put it behind them and get back in front?
For me, defensively, they seem to be defending in 1s and 2s, not knowing who was on their outside, not knowing who was on their inside, and then not being able to react to what the inside man does, particularly for the first try. And then the second try, they isolate a front row forward by O'Loughlin getting ahead of the ball and creating that hole for I think Henry Slade to go into. So they just had to shore up their connections in that. It was the same in the second half when O'Flaherty went through. He was picking off 1v1s where they had 3 guys in a connection in a line to go forward, and they just weren't. Whatever it was, whether they weren't talking or there just wasn't enough awareness. So it's something that they showed for the majority of the game, particularly in the second half, for a good 20 minutes when Exeter were attacking. Their connections were good. They were dominant in their tackle. You look at what Maloney and Baird brought off the bench. Really good. Good line speed and repeated efforts. So it's not like they can't do it for whatever reason. It was just that people were just a bit outside of, just weren't clued in those starting periods of each half.
And what does it say about them then, that the fact that they did endure those really difficult periods at the start of both halves, and they were able to put it behind them? And as we said, by the time the 30-minute mark arrived, they were level with Exeter. They were about to go in front. Within 10 minutes of the start of the second half, they'd conceded that try, nearly went back behind, and they'd extended their lead further again. So, is that the mark of an absolute top-class team?
Yeah, I think it shows massive mental strength to be able to come back from that, but more importantly, probably unwavering belief in what they had planned to do throughout the week. You saw a couple of really good first phase attacks from them that give them the opportunity low, particularly in the first half, to get that 1v1 v Woodburn, get his hands free and get that offload. So very much a belief-driven team that knew if they did what they had practiced and what they had planned to do, that the score would very much land on their side. And I think that's, for me, the biggest thing from this, that in such a high-pressured game against, which could be arguably a semi-final or final in this competition in normal years, they just held strong. When they did get the ball, they controlled it. After that 11-minute period, and they were clinical. They were very, very good.
What it did mean, the fact that Leinster conceded a couple of early tries, is that we ended up getting a game or a first half at least, that we absolutely were not expecting. We were speaking off air before the game started, and we were talking about how we were going to get a top class game, but it was going to be really tense. It was going to be down to really tiny little moments throughout the course of the whole match, and in the end, those 2 early tries meant we had an incredibly open first half with some brilliant running rugby, ball going out wide on so many occasions. It made I suppose most of that game really, really enjoyable from a neutral point of view.
Yeah, massively. You know, when you go down early like that, you have to play. You have to have the want to play, and also, as I've already said, you have to have the belief in what you're trying to do, and knowing that you're going to be accurate, particularly in that. They attacked out of their 22 on multiple occasions rather than trying to look for field position. It was a great game. There was one period where, and I think that was a real momentum shift. And probably a belief killer for Exeter in the sense that the ball didn't go out. It was in play for probably 4.5, nearly 5 minutes, and that phase of play was won by Leinster. In the second half, it was probably more of what we thought it was going to be, particularly the last 20 minutes, where Leinster slowed the speed down. That didn't suit Exeter. They had a lot of reset scrums. They got a scrum penalty obviously towards the end, and that very much shows, you control the tempo of a game, you're going to win it. You look at what happened when Leinster have probably been knocked over by Saracens or other teams in the past. They haven't controlled the tempo or executed at the right time. Saracens, before they went to the corner, probably the wrong decision. Those opportunities today, the decisions they made were clear, they were concise, and they were clinical at the right times.
And they had to overcome a couple of challenges during the game as well. Like, we didn't have half an hour gone by the time that Ross Burnett to be called for Johnny Sexton to go off with a HIA and didn't reappear. They were already missing James Ryan, they were missing Gary Ringrose, and a whole host of back row players, including Caelan Doris. Like, this isn't a Leinster team that are absolutely locked and loaded with their first choice. Ross Burnett to come on, and he had a very, very good impact, kicking, I think it was 4 out of 5 in the end.
Yeah, look, Ross Byrne for me is someone that probably isn't getting the credit that he deserves. He plays a lot of rugby, particularly when Johnny Sexton is away, and he's a very, very good player. Probably this Six Nations, I felt he probably could have got probably a bit more opportunity, particularly at the start. He's showing that now. The more he's grown into his role, when Johnny Sexton has been away, he's now in the Irish camp and in that mix all the time now. He's now throwing his hat in the ring for selection on these big days because he's backing it up when he gets the opportunity. You look at the squad that they have, the squad that they've developed. People would probably have felt that the weak link might have been Rory O'Loughlin in that back line. And they probably targeted him in the first 11 minutes, and they got that connection probably just between him and Lowe. They got a bit of change, but from then on he was excellent. Put in a lot of double efforts, some really good shots. Unfortunate not to get that breakaway try towards the end. And you look at what Maloney, Ryan Baird, what they bring off the bench. They have probably one of the best squads in Europe, I think, and a lot of it is homegrown. So, the majority of it is homegrown, and it's it's a pleasure to watch when it comes off like that. But I think when these guys come back into the reckoning, that's when you're going to see Leinster at their best.
And someone who's had a season disrupted by a lengthy enough injury, and then was in Irish camp and didn't get to see too much game time. Jordan Larmour, 2 absolutely outstanding tries for him, tries that had to really be finished. They weren't just handed to him on a plate. He had to do some serious finishing in those corners.
Yeah, I think so. The first one for me, Keenan's timing of the pass is pretty much perfect there. Just tags Hogg's inside shoulder just at the right time and then releases the ball. And then the awareness from Larmour to get in, get low and ground the ball before he goes into touch. For me, the second one was an exceptional finish. He catches the ball, he's standing, that acceleration off his left foot to get outside Hogg, who is himself incredibly sharp, and then break a tackle, but then have the awareness to really rip his shoulders in the tackle from Simmons to get down and ground the ball just before the line you're not going to see very many finishes like that this season. It was top quality.
And one other player worth mentioning then as well, he was the official man of the match today, Robbie Henshaw. Like, he is just going from strength to strength this season. He was absolutely awesome again today. What has he done in the last 6-7 months that has just actually brought his game to another level?
I think he's probably just concentrating on what he's really good at. He's leading the line defensively. He's very physical, abrasive player, and then he's showing those touches of quality, in his passing game and his kicking game. But for me, it's just his work rate is exceptional. It's his double, triple efforts. You saw today he picks Woodburn up at one stage, gets down, gets over the ball. This is in the first half when they really need something to happen. He drives past, gets a turnover, and that gives Leinster the opportunity to go into the corner. And I think they get a try from that. It's those kind of unseen things, for the want of a better word, that really show his genuine work rate. But his defensive effort is just it's world class at the moment, how he took Simmons out of the game on multiple occasions, particularly off short line outs. He got a man and ball, gave him no opportunity to get any go forward whatsoever. He was exceptional again today.
And the important then, we're down to the semi-finals. Leinster and La Rochelle are already there. On Sunday, it's going to be Bordeaux-Bègles against Racing 92 and Clermont hosting Toulouse. Obviously, a lot of it is going to come down to the luck of the draw with who gets paired in a home semi-final, because we've seen how big home advantage is. But where are Leinster ranking, do you think, in what's left in this competition?
Right up there for me, particularly if they can get some of those injuries back. Hopefully Johnny Sexton comes through after his knock today. For me, they're right up there. Probably La Rochelle are probably the unknown quantity in there so far, but you look at Clermont, Racing, they've been there before, they've been close, but for me, I think they're right in the mix, and I back them to go pretty close.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.